Our story begins on a rainy night. At a residence, two guards stand outside in the rain, keeping watch. Meanwhile, a man tells another that he's a cruel demon. Not only did he take everything he had, but the bastard also cut off his fingers. This is Jin Libong, a treasure merchant and the Grandmaster of the Alliance. Jin says that despite being like this, he shouldn't be underestimated, as he's capable of hiring someone to get revenge on him. Phantom, the best executioner in Jianghu, asks if Jin has any specific features of him, like a sketch or description. Jin Libong stares at him for a second and comments that he's handsome. They met by chance at a drinking party. His gentle attitude along with his charm and wit was something out of the ordinary. Even though he was only 20 years old, there was nothing he didn't know and not a corner of the Central Plains he hadn't visited. And so, after 2 months of hanging out together, he once showed his martial arts while drunk. Thus, Jin asked the old man to open the folding screen. He then comments that it was none other than Nang Li Sang's special martial art, the lightning sword. Phantom, upon seeing those marks on the wall, is surprised and thinks that pattern of lightning leaves, no doubt. Those are the marks of the lightning sword he'd only heard about. Mayang Li Sang, one of the 10 greatest martial arts masters of Jianghu, disappeared years ago during the Great War between the Orthodox Alliance and the demonic cult. He never reappeared, even after the war ended 20 years ago. Jin Libong says that he didn't believe it at first either, but his suspicions were confirmed when he saw the martial arts book the man held in his hands. In the end, he eliminated the guy and stole his secret technique, something more valuable than 1,000 gold coins. From the Sword of Life and Death to the 100 Great Masters of Jianghu, even one of the top 10 masters, Cheon Mu Ak, the demonic sword, went after him. However, no one ever returned. Every time Jin sent someone after him, he would come back, not only cutting off their fingers, but also taking all their possessions. And he said this when leaving, that it felt great, and there's no reason not to take everything. Phantom thinks Jin must not be lying since he tried to get rid of him, but still wonders. A 20-year-old defeating Cheon Mu Ak, the demonic sword? Jin Libong says he wanted a justification to take all his belongings fairly and asks Phantom to please eliminate that bastard. Jauk Legion, that's the name of that demon. Sometime later at an inn, the manager tells Phantom that this is the room where young Master Jauk stayed. He comments that Jauk was very considerate to servants like them during his stay. Jauk was truly a warm person. Phantom thinks people say he's warm-hearted. The results of the investigation on that guy were, some call him the elegant young Master Jauk. The lady says he barely spends money but is a truly refined man, well-versed in romance. And she still remembers the lullaby he sang that day. And to another rich man, he is the one who took all his wealth. A man with a hat said he heard Jauk cut off someone's fingers a few months ago as well. An old man comments that he too bet all his life savings at the gambling hall. He's also called the idiot who always loses money. The last info about him was that he competed in the Murim tournament. Phantom thinks that bastard is slippery and wonders who he really is. He asks if Jauk said anything before leaving. The innkeeper says that Jauk said now that he was ready to start his great life, he would look for a smart woman to take good care of him. Phantom takes a deep breath and says this guy is a true mystery. The manager says that's the room young Master Jauk used to stay in and tells him to feel free to take a look. Phantom opens the room and starts observing, thinking that nothing looks particularly different. As he enters the room, he notices a map hanging on the wall and is surprised by a mark that says, Conquer Hubei. Phantom gives a faint smile and thinks that 2 Murim tournaments will be held in Hubei this year. It's only a matter of time before he catches that bastard, but he wonders, Conquer Hubei? Why doesn't he conquer the whole world while he's at it? Suddenly, a voice says that he stopped Jauk from doing that and told him to take it easy, one step at a time. Phantom is shocked to hear that and not have noticed anyone there, quickly turning his face and asking who's there. Sometime later, while some people are having tea, they wonder why Legion went to Hubei. The other man asks how he's supposed to know what goes on in that dark head of his. Then they conclude that they should go too, since they have nothing better to do. Phantom slowly begins to regain consciousness. An old man says that if they go there, all of Jianghu will be stirred up again. The old woman comments that she's already over 100 years old anyway, while the other elder asks what the laws of the world mean to someone like him. Phantom realizes there's a scythe lodged in his shoulder. The old woman calls him young man and asks if he wants a drink. Phantom thinks about that energy and the 2 scythes, about the one said to be the most trusted ally of the former heavenly demon, the supreme demonic empress, the twin demon sword, Yang Huayong. And that symbol, he's certain it belongs to Nang Li Sang, the lightning sword, who went into hiding. Why would the former grandmaster be with the demon? And besides, there was that terrifying demonic energy, Cheon Mu Ak, the demonic sword. Phantom remembers what Jin told him before. That was the special move of the lightning sword, Nang Li Sang, and even the demonic sword, Cheon Mu Ak, went after him. He believes those people must be in cahoots with Jiok Legion. He asks why she didn't kill him. Yang replies that they promised him not to take lives without his permission. Instead, they destroyed his chi center and severed one of the tendons in his leg, commenting that, of course, she'd heard that executioners aren't afraid of death. Nang adds that they say executioners hide poison pills behind their teeth. Phantom laughs and thinks that they're telling him to take his own life, since the pain he's feeling is worse than death, and he believes there's no way out. So, he bites down on the poison pill and says the name of young master Jiok Legion, commenting that he's jealous of him for being lucky enough to be protected by masters like them. And with that, he begins to lose consciousness while the three laugh, saying that he's someone who doesn't need their help at all. The protagonist, now in a field full of flowers, is approached by a group of warriors laughing and saying they've finally found him. They ask if Jock has the book that contains the secret technique. Their leader tells his men not to let their guard down since many masters who went after him died. He says this little brat is fearless and asks if he really thought he could get away after messing with the Grandmaster of the Treasure Merchants Alliance, saying they're going to eliminate him. Just as he finishes speaking, he notices something in front of him. The protagonist hits him squarely with a palm strike, sending him flying backward. The men shout for their squad leader, asking if he's okay. Some get angry and charge at Jiok, calling him a bastard, but Joke stops a sword strike with 2 fingers and throws the attacker into his own ally, making him hit his comrade with his weapon. Then, all the men charge at once, shouting to finish him off, but Jock quickly, without giving them a chance, starts taking them down easily with his right hand, eliminating them all. The protagonist says it seems he hasn't given up yet and asks if cutting off his fingers wasn't enough. Anyone who wielded a sword during the Great War between the Orthodox faction and the demonic cult, the Great War of Demons and the Orthodox, could never have imagined that the battle would drag on for 13 years, a never-ending hell full of tears, suffering, and bloodshed. However, the long war was suddenly ended one day by an unexpected truce. Even 20 years later, the details of that truce remain a mystery. Both the heavenly demonic cult and the Orthodox Alliance agreed to remain silent. As time passed, new forces began to emerge in Jianghu, while some families grew weak because of the war. A woman training intensely wonders why, in hell, she can't break through the 7-star realm. This is Zhang Charion, second daughter of the leader of the righteous sword sect. Zhang thinks she must master the Red Death sword art as soon as possible to restore her family. The Red Death sword is an art passed down for generations in the sect. She sheathes her sword and, feeling discouraged, says that, strangely, her skills aren't progressing. Suddenly, someone calls her. She looks back and sees her sister, Zhang Huarian, the eldest daughter of the sect leader, and her brother-in-law, Seo Beck, Huarian's husband. Charian asks what brings them there so early during her training. Huarian sighs and says someone from the Jiangshen clan has arrived. The swordsman Zhang wants to compete with her in this year's Dragon and Phoenix tournament. She's surprised and asks, "What?" Among the martial artists of the Central Plains, there are 2 tournaments that stand out as the grandest. The Celestial Dragon Tournament, where sex, honor, and even lives hang by a thread, the greatest martial arts tournament under these heavens. And for young men and women competing in pairs, the Dragon and Phoenix Tournament, an event that reveals rising talent. This year, both tournaments will be held in Wuhan, in Hubei. Charion thinks that pairing up with a child is already bad enough, but wonders about teaming up with that damn pervert Zhang Ingeol and says, no way, she can't do it, yelling and asking why the hell she has to get involved with someone like him. Huarian tells her to stop whining and listen to what she has to say first, while Beck asks the girls not to fight. Huarian says she's always claiming she'll bring honor to the clan's name, and if Charion is selected for the tournament, she'll gain enormous prestige. However, if her sister goes against the Jiangshin clan, Charion cuts her off, runs off, and says she already said she'll never do it. Questioning why her sister doesn't just lie about her age and go in her place, Huarian sighs deeply while Seo Beck comments that who would have guessed she'd take after her sister so much. Sometime later, in the middle of the city, vendors call out that they've got lots of new items, and some say they're selling Westlake Longjing tea for less than half the usual price. As Charion walks, she starts hearing a few men asking if they heard the news. The Grandmaster lost another finger this time, and it seems someone's punishing him for his bad behavior. Charion begins to remember her sister's words. What if the Jiangshin clan holds a grudge against our clan or even seeks retaliation? She wonders if they really think they can do whatever they want just because they're a powerful clan. People start arguing, saying that wasn't the deal. And another questions if he really wants to lose his life, deceiving each other, hurting each other. One man says that if his lord could lend his strength to this matter, and the other replies that he doesn't need to worry about it, just make sure to take care of what they talked about last time. Schemes and dirty tricks running rampant, people robbing each other or pointing swords at one another. This is the Jianghu she dreamed of for so long. Suddenly, people watching a theater play in the middle of the square start shouting that it's the leader of the Murim alliance. To think that the dream of unifying the demonic cult ended so fruitfully. People start saying that the heavenly demon has fallen and that the 13-year war has finally come to an end. Long live the leader. Sharion, in disbelief, says that it makes no sense and wonders how, even if it's just a play, nothing has ever been revealed about the end of the war between the Orthodox faction and the demonic cult. Jock Legion appears behind her, saying he thinks the same, because the heavenly demon's 9 calamities technique is also called the invincible demonic art, and in a one-on-one fight, no one could defeat him. Besides, the Great War between the Orthodox Alliance and the demonic cult didn't end in such a trivial way. Sharion, stunned, wonders what's wrong with this guy. Legion says he's dying of thirst and asks if she wants to grab a drink, commenting that he'll just ask her to show him the way since it's his first time there in Wuhan. She wonders what little trick he's planning with that innocent face, and says that if Jock is a martial artist, he shouldn't act like a useless bum, stating that she has some business to take care of and is heading out. The protagonist asks if Charion really thinks this Jianghu has that much value. She asks what he means by that. Jock Legion replies that ideals and chivalry were abandoned long ago, that this Jianghu is nothing more than a facade, and asks if that isn't pathetic. Hearing that, she grips her sword tightly and thinks she needs to calm down and breathe, that there's no need to worry, and says that he's still living in this Jianghu. With that, Charion begins to walk away, thinking that this Jianghu isn't bad enough to deserve such disrespect. The protagonist watches her, gives a slight smile, and starts walking toward his destination. Meanwhile, the streets are crowded and people comment that they've never seen so many people in the streets of Wuhan before. Sometime later at the Huayang Inn, waiters run around serving drinks to everyone. While some say they've heard that the Dragon and Phoenix tournament is going to be extraordinary, and that the favorite candidate this year is the swordsman Im from the Bukcheon family. They also mention that the young swordsman from the Namak sect shouldn't be underestimated. Charion enters the inn and wonders if all this is because of the tournament, but realizes there are way more people there than she expected. The manager of Huayang Inn says, well, if it isn't young lady Zhong of the Righteous Sword sect, and asks what brings her there alone. Charion replies that she just wanted a light drink. He says what he can do is take her to the special rooms, as those are the only seats available at the moment, and asks her to follow him, calling her Miss Zhong and saying she's the best in Wuhan, so he'll give her a small discount. People around them murmur, best in Wuhan, or comment there's no chance, since she's just too beautiful. As Charion climbs up to the special seating, she wonders who started spreading this kind of rumor. She thinks she usually doesn't visit inns alone and questions whether it was the Zhangxin clan or that weird guy from earlier. Suddenly, the protagonist says that they meet again and comments that if he'd known he would see her there, he would have come along. Charion thinks her luck is total crap today. A few minutes later, Legion grabs a chicken leg and starts talking about the tournament, asking if she knows how to register and what the deadline is. She wonders if he has a black hole in his stomach and asks if the young master is seriously talking about participating. Joke replies that of course he is and asks if there won't be tons of pretty girls there, saying his face tends to catch their attention, and comments that he's been traveling since he was 10 and everywhere he went, girls chased after him. Charion thinks no way in hell and questions if Jock's always been this kind of person, remembering the things he said earlier about the war between the Orthodox Alliance and the demonic cult not ending in a trivial way, and thinks he's acting completely different now. Legion says he's finally realized who the most beautiful woman in all of Jianghu is, leaving Charion confused, and he states with full conviction, it's his mother. Charion, surprised, asks, your mother? And he snaps back asking if she's disrespecting his mom just because she's getting old. Embarrassed, she says that's not it and wonders why she's confused and what she did wrong. What the hell? The protagonist changes the subject, saying that aside from that, he's getting excited about the upcoming big event, and that it makes him even hungrier than usual. She asks if it's because of the tournament. Joke says no, and with a serious expression states that obviously he's going to win the tournament because he's planning to conquer Hubei this year. Charion, shocked, thinks, conquer Hubei? Legion says he's got a ton to worry about and even more to do, and during times like that he really gets hungrier. She questions whether winning the tournament and conquering Hubei isn't a bit arrogant. At that moment, someone appears saying he thought he heard a voice while passing by, and recognizes young lady Zhong of the Righteous Sword sect, commenting that it's been a while. It's Zhang Ingeol, successor of the Zhangxin clan, who says they're going to have a drink there too. A young girl in his group, his younger sister Zhang Inhua, asks if they should really stay there. Ingeol asks how Charion has been, and she, annoyed, thinks that his disgusting habit of scanning her body is stronger than ever and feels like punching him, but knows she has to hold back. Zhang Ingyol then looks to the side, sees Jock eating at the next table, and comments that it seems someone else is there, tossing a gold coin into his food and saying it's to pay the bill, asking Jock to leave if he's done. Legion replies that it's not enough, since there's more food coming and the coin clearly doesn't cover it all. Ingyol calls him a bastard and tells him to leave while he's still being polite. But when he looks to the side and sees Jock's two swords, he starts laughing, saying Jock is acting all arrogant just because he's a Jianghu member, and comments that his sword looks huge. He tries to lift the sword but feels pain in his back and, surprised, wonders why it's so heavy. He thinks that if he backs down now, it'll be the worst humiliation possible, so he decides to use his internal energy to lift it. Ingeol starts raising the sword slowly, says it's heavy, and asks if Jock uses it for strength training. Others in his group say it looks like Rock Lee's weights. Legion then easily picks up the sword and rests it on his shoulder, saying it's not for training. Ingeol, furious, calls him a bastard and insists it obviously is. The protagonist replies no, it's his real sword. Ingeol, even more pissed off, says then he was right and asks if Jock is messing with him. Sharion intervenes, telling him to stop, reminding him that they're in an inn. Everyone is surprised as Zhang Ingeol starts laughing and, looking at her with a certain expression, asks if she's interested in him. He then grabs her arm and says they'll be entering the Dragon and Phoenix tournament together anyway, so it would be a good idea to get to know each other better before that. Sharion says she's sorry, but she'll be participating with someone else. Ingeol asks why. Irritated, Zhang Charion replies that it's because he uses his family's power to force things onto her, calling it a petty and shameful act. Ingeol, furious, demands to know who she'll be partnering with. Charion hesitates until the protagonist answers that it'll be with him, that the two of them will be entering together. Zhang Ingeol is left confused. Manhwa walks up to Jock and asks if he knows who he's talking to. Jock Legion replies that he doesn't, and asks if she knows who he is too. Zhang Inhua sighs and says of course she doesn't. Legion says people respond in two ways when faced with the unknown. Either they reject it, or they fear it. But Inhua is doing both, looking down on him for being unknown while hoping he's afraid of that guy over there, and asks if that's not a bit contradictory. Inhua, with a slight smile, says she really doesn't know. Ingeol says the protagonist really has some guts, and young Master Legion responds that he eats well, and people say those who eat well also speak well. Ingeol, irritated, starts cracking the table with his fingers. The protagonist tells him to be careful not to waste the food. Zhang Ingeol stares at him, then adjusts his clothes and leaves, saying he'll see them at the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. The others begin following young Master Zhang. Before leaving, Inhua looks back and says she'll see him again soon. Charayon, thoughtful, believes she's screwed. Considering Zhang Ingeol's temper, he'll be in danger too. The protagonist says that now that it's come to this, they'll need to participate in the tournament together and revise their plans. She asks revise and wonders if Jock hadn't been planning to enter the tournament from the start. He replies that that's exactly why the plan needs revising. Charion asks if, when he said he wanted to participate, he meant the Celestial Dragon Tournament. Legion responds, of course. Zhang Charion asks why, if he has such amazing martial arts, he didn't give them a proper beating. Jock says he doesn't fight kids. She gets irritated hearing that. Young Master Legion remarks that, after all, aren't kids like those the reason Jianghu is in decline? Charion thinks that if he says that with such a serious expression, it might actually sound true. Sometime later, Ingeol's group members say it seems like Miss Zhang really likes young Master Zhang and that she's clearly trying to make him jealous. Another adds that she has no chance of winning in the end, and to think she'd reject the young master to enter the tournament with that ridiculous guy. Ingeol thinks, ridiculous guy? That sword definitely wasn't made to be wielded with one hand. It's his first time seeing him, and he wonders who exactly he is. And that arrogant wench, who does she think she is to reject him? He says he'll make both of them pay with their lives for what happened today. Sometime later, at the Righteous Sword Sect, Huarian comments that her sister rejected young Master Zhang's offer without hesitation, and that she heard young Ingeol made a scene at the brothel because of it. An Su, matriarch of the Righteous Sword Sect, says she was worried because of rumors that the young master wasn't very good to begin with. Huarian says no one knows what young Master Zhang might do with that temper of his. An Su says Charion is still young, so they can't make her sacrifice herself for the family. Huarian replies that this isn't just about the family. He could hurt her too. Zhang Lichu, leader of the Righteous Sword Sect, thinks that his wife and daughters are suffering because of his disability. If he had manifested the Red Death Sword, their family could be powerful too. Zhang Huarian says that, in any case, if it's true, it's a serious problem and they need to find Charion first. Suddenly, Charion appears, saying there's no need to look, because it's true. An Su says they were worried and asks who that boy is. She, a bit hesitant, says he's her partner for the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. All three are shocked and ask what she just said. The protagonist steps forward, says it's a pleasure to meet them, and introduces himself as Jiok Legion. Sometime later, young Master Legion asks if the patriarch said that was a porcelain vase from the Fujian region, and how much he paid for it. Zhang Lichu replies, 150 Niang. Jiok says that's a shame, because if he had been there, he would have only paid 120 Niang. Lichu then asks Cherion if it's true she's entering the Dragon and Phoenix tournament with young Master Jiok. Zhang Huarian thinks that no matter how childish Cherion is, she still wonders how she could enter such a tournament alongside such a strange guy and asks what sect young Master Joke belongs to. Legion places the vase on the table and says he doesn't belong to any, but that his parents sell fruit near the gates of Yumen. Zhang Cherion, surprised, asks if she heard that right. Leichu then asks about the swords on his back if he really manifested both sword and blade arts at the same time, thinking that's something only a third-rate bandit would do, even for aesthetics. The protagonist answers yes, that he's mastered both, and says he's exceptional in many areas because he comes from a strong bloodline. Lichu asks if he learned martial arts from his fruit-selling parents. Legion replies yes, and asks if he's never eaten fruit before. Huarian then tells her sister that she should apologize to young Master Zhang as soon as she wakes up the next morning. At nightfall in the garden of Charion's house, she thinks that she brought Jock home in case Zhang Inguol tried something against him, but now wonders what to do next. She sees the protagonist also walking and asks if he can't sleep either. Legion replies that he never sleeps well when changing places, and that he still has something to do now. She asks what it is, and he, with a faint smile, says he's going to send some guys to the other side tonight. Charion wonders why he makes such a brutal joke in such a serious tone and questions whether the fruit shop story was also a joke. She wants to know what kind of people his parents are since he said his mother was beautiful and about his father. Jock replies that his father tries to do everything by the law, which is good, but imposed those same rules on him, and that's the problem. He says his parents should have entered Jianghu, especially his father. Charion thinks that if his parents aren't part of Jianghu, they must be worried about their son. The protagonist says they did mention being worried about Jianghu. She's surprised, understands that too, and thinks that in any case, her own parents are worried about her as well. But now that they've come this far, there's no turning back. Jiok notices that Cherion looks down and comments that, by the way, he thinks he's already digested dinner, maybe because he only ate vegetables, and asks if they will be serving meat tomorrow. She asks what he said and tells him to stop saying nonsense, adding that after breakfast, he'd better leave that place. The protagonist watches her silently, and Cherion asks, what is it? Legion asks if she's worried about him. Jiang Cherion blushes and replies, no way, then walks off saying she's only worried about the people he'll run into in the future. Sometime later, inside a mansion, intense internal energy exudes while 4 guards stand on watch. One of the guards comments that the young boy is trembling with a sword in hand, trying to avenge his father's death, and wonders how he couldn't notice that. He says there's no choice but to send him to the other side to be with his father, and they all burst into laughter. The guard with the top knot comments that at least they saved a poor child from becoming an orphan. Suddenly, the protagonist appears before them, and the guards ask who he is, why he's standing there like that, and if he even knows where he is. Joke replies that he's in the Black Center, the place known as the Wandering Market. The man with the top knot asks if he knows what this place is and still chose to come, commenting that the world is changing, now even little brats walk around here. Legion says if the word brat comes out of his mouth again, he'll lose his life. The man goes silent, stands up and starts drawing his sword, saying he was going easy on him because the young master's just a brat, and quickly charges at him, asking if he has no manners. Legion easily dodges the attack, focuses internal energy into his palm and hits him slowly in the stomach. The others watch and start laughing, saying the idiot is about to be beaten by a kid, telling the protagonist to give it up and go help his mom with her business. Joke grabs the top-knot man's sword and his body drops to the ground, leaving the others stunned. Legion says this is a very important moment for him as today he'll take his first step toward the future, so he has no choice but to strengthen his resolve. The men stand up, draw their swords, and ask what kind of nonsense he's spouting now. The protagonist quickly charges at them, commenting that even those he would normally spare will lose their lives today, slashing his sword and cutting them in half. Sometime later, inside the mansion, young Master Jok walks into a room, stepping over the bodies he cut down along the way. Upon opening the door, he sees several women fanning the master of the place and a hunchback serving drinks. The protagonist looks around as he approaches and comments that the place has quite the atmosphere. The fat man takes a sip of wine, slams his hand on the chair, and asks if Jock came as a guest, wondering what he came to buy that caused all this mess. This man is the Glutton Emperor, the leader of the Black Center. Legion says he wants the most expensive person in that room. The glutton emperor starts laughing while exuding his internal energy and wonders how a child who hides behind his parents in fear dares try to buy him. He asks if a kid like him even has enough money. Jok asks how much it would be. The man replies, 500,000 Nyang. The protagonist throws the money to the floor, saying there's 500,000 Nyang right there, and asks if the deal is closed then. The glutton emperor had judged him as all talk, but now wonders if he really has all that money, and, upon observing his hand, believes Jok still has much more in his pouch. The man asks, what if he raises the price? Jok says he'll be disappointed. The glutton emperor, with a malicious grin, asks what if he kills him and takes the money. Legion, with a faint smile and serious tone, replies that he'll be even more disappointed. The fat man raises his hand, and the women around begin walking forward as he says he'll disappoint him a little then. They surround the protagonist, dancing, staring at Jiok more and more with soft smiles, while a captivating aura spreads through the room. The glutton emperor thinks that the moment Jiok stepped into the room, he was already caught. This is the pinnacle of sorcery that paralyzes a man's reason, the illusory dance of bliss. One of the women removes her hairpin and tries to strike the young master stealthily, but he intercepts the attack with his palm, blocking her arm and commenting that it was a good dance, just not good enough to kill him. He then throws the binyo at the fat man, striking the railing behind him and leaving the women shocked. In disbelief, they say the spell was broken. The fat man wonders if that brat immediately noticed they were using a soul manipulation tool. Legion asks if any of them are there of their own free will because they like that man, and upon silence states that of course not, asking if they were forced to be there. He tells them to leave, saying they don't need to worry about the consequences. One of the women hesitates and asks if he really wants them to go. The protagonist replies that she must be afraid to leave in front of him, but still, she should find the courage and walk away on her own, asking if she doesn't believe she can have a good life after this. The fat man bursts out laughing and says it's a fascinating speech, saying fine, they can go, but only after cutting off a limb. The protagonist asks if he's serious, and with a maniacal smile, says then he'll be the one cutting him down alive. The glutton emperor is startled by the intense presence and wonders what kind of murderous intent that is. Suddenly, he hears the dancers thanking the young master and saying that, just as Jok said, they'll gather their courage and never forget his kindness in giving them so much money. Legion replies that they'll need it to start over from scratch and wishes the sisters a good life. The hunchback realizes the glutton emperor is getting angrier and angrier. The fat man, frozen, wonders how the mighty glutton emperor could be intimidated by such killing, intent from a mere brat, and questions whether all he can do now is watch them leave. Consumed by deep hatred, he says he feels worse than ever. His eyes burn with fury as he clenches his hand with a grotesque snap and, in a burst of brute strength, shatters the bracelet he was wearing. With a muffled roar, he stomps the ground, cracking the floorboard beneath him using the body reinforcement art of the feared glutton emperor. He roars that he'll eliminate his opponent with his special martial art. Jiok Legion, with a sharp and provocative gaze, replies that maybe the emperor could do it if he grows a little more. The emperor strikes with a punch as fast as thunder, but Jiok dodges effortlessly. Then, like an arrow, he charges straight at the fat man. The emperor notices and tries to react, but once again Jiok slips past him with ease, flashing a mocking grin. The fat man, on the verge of exploding, yells that he's a filthy rat and orders him to keep running as he'll turn him into dust. Without hesitation, the protagonist leaps high into the air, eyes burning with rage, and says he hates people like him, then delivers a precise kick to the emperor's chin, launching him against the doors, which shatter on impact. On his knees and wounded, the emperor begins focusing his internal energy in his left hand. Jiok, holding a small stone, looks at him with disdain and calls him a disgusting bastard, demanding to know why he kept those women imprisoned. With a swift and furious motion, he hurls the energy-infused stone, severing the emperor's arm. The glutton emperor is stunned, staggering, kneeling on the ground, and in the midst of the chaos, he thinks, this damn brat is a true master. Even so, he grins proudly and asks if Jok really thinks the great emperor will fall that easily. His energy then begins to surge, fierce and threatening, and he says he'll personally make sure to kill him. But before he can finish, young Master Jok charges in with his purple void, hitting him directly, piercing through his body and destroying everything in its path. The emperor starts vomiting, his strength fading, and finally collapses to the ground, defeated. Young Master Legion says he paid for his life, so he's going to take it. With a trembling voice, the fat man asks where Jok plans to take his dying corpse. Jok replies that there's been a small misunderstanding and points to the hunchback, saying he was talking to him, not to the glutton emperor. The fat man asks what that good-for-nothing could even do, and adds that if he were someone from Jok's group, he could have been taken without a word, so why bother? Jok answers that he needed a reason to kill him. The Emperor, voice shaking, says Joke is just as bad as him. The protagonist replies maybe because good people would never have fallen for his tricks. The fat man says there's no way someone like that could exist in Jianghu, and with that he loses the last of his strength. Legion then turns to the hunchback and says they've finally met. Master of the Hua Mansion, or rather Hua Mukyol, he asks if that's how he'll respond. The hunchback says that's right, that he hasn't heard that name in a long time. This is Hua Mukyol, the founding patriarch of the Phantom Mansion of Mount Tai. The protagonist asks what happened for such a genius of formation arts and engineering techniques to end up in a place like that, and comments that it took a long time to find him because of it. As expected, he asks if it's still hard to recover from that incident. The Phantom Mansion of Mount Tai is known throughout Jianghu for its unmatched engineering techniques. Hua Muqiol, who possessed exceptional talent and an incredible family, was a man who had no one to envy, at least until his only daughter touched an unfinished mechanical device. Losing his family in that accident made him blame his own foolishness, change his appearance, and choose to hide away. Muchiol says there's no way to forget it, and a few tears begin to fall from his eyes. Young Master Joke says that he's a good adult who has been suffering for 10 years. No one who suffered that much could forget the pain and sorrow of losing their family. Muchiol thinks this is a strange young man who is trying to save him, even though they've only met once, even risking his life, and wonders if anyone until now has ever tried to say something like that to him. Hua Muchiol asks how Jiok intends to use him after buying him. The protagonist, with a serious gaze, says he'll use him to dominate Jianghu. Upon hearing those words, Muchiol starts laughing and wonders if this is his new destiny. He kneels to the ground and says, Hua Muchiol greets his master, declaring he will devote the rest of his life to him. Jiok gets excited and calls him to get started. The hunchback is confused and suddenly sees the young master with fists burning in flames, unsure of what's happening. Outside the mansion, a man in disguise hiding among the trees wonders if the young master is still fighting. Sometime later inside the mansion, Muchiol comments that he had heard a body transformed by supreme arts could never be repaired, so he asks how the young master did it and thanks him sincerely. The protagonist replies that he's going to use him until his bones explode, so he's the one who's grateful. Suddenly, someone appears asking if it was him who did all that, young master. It's Mu Yong, Jock Legion's bodyguard. Legion calls out to him and asks him, please, to shave that beard, saying he looks like an old man. The young master introduces Mu Yong to the master of Hua Mansion, saying he's his bodyguard and will be responsible for guiding him on what Muchiol needs to do from now on. Then, he tells Mu Yong that plans have changed and they'll start with the Zhangxin clan. His guard is surprised and reminds him that Jiok himself had said it wasn't even worth bothering with the Zhangxin clan or entering the Dragon and Phoenix tournament so soon, so he asks why the change of plans. Legion replies that no one knows what goes on in people's heads or when things might change. Mu Young comments that that's exactly what a playboy would say. The protagonist says he gets it and comments that Mu Young is jealous of his popularity. Mu Young replies that, of course not, just because a lot of women chase after him doesn't mean he's lucky in love. That's just attention. True luck in love is marrying a good woman. Legion says he understands. He's clearly very jealous. Muchiol can't believe the childish bickering between the two. At the Zhangxin clan, the guards inform Zhang Lichu and Zhang Charian that the union leader and the young master are currently out. Lichu asks if they know when they'll return, but the guards say they don't. Lichu recalls what his eldest daughter, Huarian, said, that she heard young master Zhang caused a scene at the brothel over what happened, and believes they should apologize before things get out of hand. He asks the guards to please let them know they were there as soon as the leaders return. Suddenly, the mansion doors begin to open. A man says, well, if it isn't Grandmaster Zhang, and mentions that he came at the union leader's request, but didn't expect to see someone who would make him so happy just by showing up. This is Quan Hyuki, known by the title 8 Flying Palms. Lichu greets Grandmaster Quan and comments how long it's been. He recalls hearing that the Zhangxin clan leader was showing off by inviting skilled individuals, but it seems he's selective about who he invites. Hyuki says it seems they both have some free time and asks what he thinks about having a few drinks. Zhang Lichu replies that it'll be on him. Quan laughs and asks if they may go. Meanwhile, inside the Zhangxin mansion, Zhang Ingyol watches with a slight smile. At the Spring Breeze Inn, Hyuki pours Lichu a glass and says they should drink. It's bear bile wine, very rare. Lichu says he's pleased to try it thanks to Grandmaster Quan. Hyuki then says, it seems the Zhangxin clan leader is quite upset. Zhang asks Quan to speak kindly of them if he gets the chance. Quan laughs and tells him not to worry. He'll put in a good word for Lichu and comments that it's normal for kids to fight. Charion, deep in thought, remembers earlier when she asked if young Master Joke was there. The servant replied yes, and said it seemed he had gone out the night before. She wonders how he could leave without a word. Irritated, she eats while thinking Jock was whining about wanting to eat meat and all that. So why did he leave so early? She wonders if he's leaving Wuhan already. Sometime later, Li Chu thanks Quan and says they had a good time and great wine thanks to him. And next time, it's on him. Quan suddenly shouts, "Oh my God," and says it seems he forgot something urgent that needs his attention. He says he's heading out first and we'll see them next time. The manager turns to Li Chu and says the bill is ready. When Zhang Li Chu picks it up, he's shocked to see that a bottle of wine costs 120 Niang, and even more shocked by the outrageous prices of the main dishes. Li Chu sighs deeply and says he doesn't have much money right now, asking if he can come back tomorrow. The manager says they don't accept tabs, but they also can't ignore his situation. Until he brings the money, his daughter will remain there. Zhang Lichu asks if she's trying to keep his daughter as a hostage. The manager says he can consider it collateral and adds that if he can't pay, his daughter can entertain the guests as well. Lichu wonders if she's gone mad. This can't be an ordinary wine house. Worse, they all have an unusual aura and might even be stronger than him. Suddenly, someone says they meet again, sect leader. Lichu and Cherion are surprised to see that it's young master Jiok. Cherion asks what brings him there, and he replies, of course, to drink. He places a bottle of wine on the table and says to Nunim that the wine tastes a bit strange, asking if she mixed something into it. She asks what he means. Legion says he heard that big shots come there and wonders if she's selling fake wine to them too. Nunim says he sounds drunk and asks him to lower his voice. The protagonist gives a slight grin and shouts loudly that the bare bile wine sold there is fake. The wine is fake. The people around get confused and start asking what he means by fake. The manager says a drunk customer is causing a commotion and tells the others not to listen to him. Young Master Joke questions, "A commotion?" and says he'll show everyone there the proof. And if he can prove the wine is fake, he'll take everything the place earned today. Nunim asks, what if he fails? The protagonist replies that they can make liquor with his gallbladder. Outside the Spring Breeze Inn, Legion calls everyone to follow him and stops in front of a small storage area. People outside ask if this place always had a backyard, while another asks what kind of proof he has. Young Master Jock says people have been getting wine from this place, but asks if they don't find it odd, because their wine stock is kept in a faraway hidden location, even locked up with chains and an iron padlock. Nunim says there's no way they would store wine in the place like this, and asks if he doesn't realize they store trade secrets in their warehouse. One person says, "My lord, this young boy just broke the door with his bare hands. What a show of strength." Nunim, seeing Juok holding the jar, tells him to stop, while others start asking what that is and why it smells like alcohol. The protagonist grabs a wooden bowl and says, "This is the true identity of the precious wine." The manager, desperate, thinks she has to stop him. If the customers see it, she's done for. As she opens her mouth with a hidden needle, she believes that now that things have reached this point, there's no choice but to eliminate him first and vanish with the wine amid the chaos to follow. And so, she fires the needle at him. Legion notices and smiles faintly, quickly grabbing the wine jar and placing it in front of the incoming needle. As the wine jar shatters, the liquid sprays into the air. The people, seeing it, are in disbelief, as they realize there are bugs in the wine. They don't understand and start asking why there are insects in the wine. The protagonist fills the wooden bowl and asks if anyone wants to try it. People begin to refuse, while others look disgusted. Jock asks how he's supposed to prove it if no one wants to taste it, and loudly asks if anyone will volunteer. An irritated man tells him to stop already, calls him a bastard, and says he's never heard of bare bile wine being made with bugs. Legion, holding an insect on his finger, says these bugs are called painted back insects, named because their backs resemble a work of art. The man asks what that has to do with the wine. Young Master Joke explains that painted back insects taste the same as bear bile, especially their excretion. It's so similar that unless you have a critic's palate, you'd never notice the difference. Suddenly, someone appears and asks how he knows that. Nunim is shocked to see its elder Yang In-myung. This old man is Yang In-myung, the leader of the Southern Peak Alliance. After 13 years of war between the Orthodox sects and the demons with heavy losses, the 9 great sects and the 4 great families shut their doors, and the demonic cult went into isolation. Windcloud City, Supreme Heaven Clan of the Northern Sky, the Union of the Dark Path, and the Southern Peak Alliance. Taking advantage of that void, 4 major forces rose to power in Jianghu. Among them, the Supreme Heaven Clan and the Southern Peak Alliance are the most dominant, so this plain-looking old man is actually one of the most powerful people in Jianghu today. Jiok notices people around greeting him. In-myung says he heard painted-back insects only live in the south and asks how Jiok knows about them. Legion replies that he's traveled a lot since he was young. The old man says his knowledge is vast and asks who he is. The protagonist says he's Jiok Legion, eldest son of drifting clouds and flowing water. In-myung repeats, "Drifting clouds and flowing water?" Young Master Joke says it means the best fruit vendors in the countryside. Young In Myung stays silent for a few seconds and then bursts into laughter. The old man wonders if Joke is intentionally hiding his identity and says he's an interesting fellow. A bearded man watches the old master and can't believe the alliance leader is showing interest in that brat. How strange. This is Marquis, leader of the White Tiger Squad of the Southern Peak Alliance. Marquis tells the old man he'll give it a try, then takes the wooden bowl and drinks. After tasting the wine with bugs, he becomes furious, calls Nunim a wench, and says it tastes exactly like what was served earlier. The people, shocked, ask if what they drank before was that. Nunim tries to calm everyone down, but they rush toward her, demanding the real wine or her head. The manager yells at the guards, calling them bastards and asking why they aren't stopping the crowd. They just stand still, while Nunim asks if they know who's backing her and warns that anyone who messes with her will lose their life. Zhang Lichu calls young Master Jock and says that if it weren't for him, they'd probably be in serious trouble and thanks him sincerely. The protagonist replies, "Of course! If it wasn't for me, who else could be so amazing?" Then, with a slight smile, he says he's looking forward to seeing how they'll treat him as their savior. Legion asks if they should leave now, mentioning that he'll have to bother them for a while since there are no vacant rooms due to the tournament. Marquis comments that the young man is quite interesting. In Myung replies no, that he's more than that. Marquis, confused, asks what he means. The old man, In Myung, says that the moment he saw him, a feeling he'd long forgotten suddenly returned. He wonders what this is. A mix of excitement and trembling, discouragement and ambition, all stirring inside him just like the day the Southern Peak Alliance fell into his hands. And he has no idea why he feels that way. Marquis thinks the Alliance leader he knows has the insight to evaluate nearly anything, yet he says he doesn't know, and wonders if that young master really is someone special. At dusk, deep in the forest, a badly injured man runs at high speed, believing he must warn them no matter what. The future of Jianghu depends on it. Suddenly, he senses someone approaching and thinks he's already been caught. Saron appears, saying he's from the Orthodox Alliance and shows his ID plaque. The warrior believes it's authentic, definitely an Orthodox Alliance ID, and introduces himself as Myung from the Supreme Heaven Clan of the North. He says there's no time, so he'll get straight to the point. They need to cancel the Dragon and Phoenix tournament and the Celestial Dragon tournament because a group called the Flying Swallow Association is plotting a major conspiracy at the event. Saron asks if the tournament isn't being sponsored this year by the Supreme Heaven Clan of the North and wonders why he's trying to reach the Orthodox Alliance instead of reporting to his own superiors. Myung replies that there's a spy among them, so he can't trust anyone. Suddenly, Myung senses two more people approaching and says they're being followed. He says he'll act as bait so Saron can get ahead and warn everyone. Saron asks if the information was leaked to anyone else. Myung says he's the first to know. Saron, with a malicious smile, says, "What a relief." Myung is confused, but Saron quickly beheads him, saying he got it wrong. It's not the Flying Swallow Association, but the Flying Butterfly Association. Saron says, the 16th butterfly greets the leader of the association. The leader asks what happened to the others. He replies that the 14th butterfly said she took care of them. The leader smiles and says she knows he'll handle the rest. The Dragon and Phoenix tournament is going to become a nightmare. Elsewhere in the forest, young Master Jog says he's looking forward to it and asks what delicious meat the sect leader is going to buy, commenting that he's hungry. Charion asks if he's always hungry. The protagonist says it's because he's been thinking a lot lately. She asks if it's about conquering Hubei. He says that too. Charion asks, "What else then?" Suddenly, the young master senses something strange. While she wonders if he feels lonely being in a foreign land, then quickly says, "Thank you." He's confused, but Charion says it's for today and adds that Zhang Injul definitely ordered Quan Hyuki and the innkeeper to set all that up, and to think she actually considered entering the Dragon and Phoenix tournament with that bastard. Legion says that's why she should go with him. He promises he'll bring her victory. Charion looks at him for a moment and says, "All right then." Hearing that, the protagonist gives a faint smile. She says winning might be hard, but she wants to put that bastard Zhang Ingyol in his place. Excited, Charion says they'll do their best. Jok tells her she doesn't have to, but if she wants to, he guesses they'll have to deal with this idiot first. She's surprised when she sees Quan and he asks why Zhang Charion looks so angry, saying the guy he placed at the inn said some bastard ruined everything. The protagonist asks if his hobby is sneaking behind the backs of his targets before killing them. Charion can't believe it and asks what Jok means by that. Quan Hyuki says Zhang Ingyol only ordered him to eliminate the young master, but now the girl beside him will be a problem too. Zhang Charion is frightened and can feel the killing intent. She truly believes Quan is planning to take their lives. She, holding her sword while trembling, wonders if they could defeat him by joining forces, but remembers she's never taken a life before, and quickly turns to the side to ask if the young master Jock has any real combat experience. But the protagonist steps back, leaving her confused. Legion moves closer to her and asks her to protect him. Kwon Hyuki, a master of palm techniques, when using his art makes his hands appear to multiply into 8, which earned him the nickname 8 Flying Palms. He was once a hero who dreamed of the best for Jianghu, but villains always seemed to thrive. He realized that the distinction between good and evil was meaningless, so he became a villain himself. Zhang Charian thinks she never imagined she'd have to face this man alone. The difference in skill and experience is like heaven and earth. Joke notices her trembling and whispers in her ear that for now, it's best to draw her sword. Charion draws her blade, telling herself she can't just stand there and let it happen. Kwon, seeing her point the sword at him, says she's eager to lose her life and quickly rushes toward her using his palm techniques. Charion dodges and thinks she needs to use her footwork techniques too, but accidentally trips on a tree root and crashes her back against the trunk. Without hesitation, Kwon continues to charge at her with his palms, but Charion ducks just in time, dodging again. She's shocked by the difference. This is nothing like training. She could really die. Suddenly, young Master Jog tells Charion not to rely only on her footwork. She needs to let her body follow the flow of her sword. Her feet shouldn't move the sword. Her sword should move first, then her feet follow. Jiang Charion thinks he's right and decides to focus only on the sword. Kwon Hyuki calls Legion a brat and says he sure talks a lot for someone hiding behind her. Charion takes advantage of the opening and tries to slash him with her sword, but he quickly dodges the strike and pushes her arm aside. She thinks that if she slips up, they'll both die. So she grits her teeth and begins attacking relentlessly, but Kwon blocks her blows with his palm techniques, saying it's ridiculous. Zhang Charion keeps swinging, but Kwon deflects everything and asks if she really thinks childish tricks like that will work on him. He swiftly tries to land a palm strike, but she notices in time and jumps back. Charion wonders if she really can't hold her own and asks herself what she can do. Legion then asks if something doesn't feel off. She asks, "What?" The protagonist says her Scarlet Stroke sword technique is usually heavy, so why is she moving so lightly? Zhang Charion is shocked and thinks, the Scarlet Stroke sword technique? She remembers her father telling her when she was a child that the Scarlet Stroke sword technique involves a variety of footwork changes and irregular fencing. It's based on movement agility. Charion wonders if Jiak is saying the method she trained in for 10 years is wrong. On top of that, what does this guy know about the Scarlet Stroke sword technique? He was the one begging for his life earlier. The protagonist says right now she looks like a turtle flipped on its back in the sand, but she feels like she's been wearing clothes that didn't fit for a long time. Ever since reaching the 7-star realm, she's felt blocked by a great wall and wonders, could it be that this guy is actually right? The Scarlet Stroke sword technique is indeed fast like an arrow, slow like a turtle, and fluid like water. At this point, the only option is to try, heavy and light. Charion, following young Master Jock's words, swings and ends up slicing a bit of Kwon's hair, thinking, that's it. Kwon Hyuki, enraged, uses his palm technique and charges at her, calling her an arrogant brat. Charion raises her sword and manages to block, but the blow is too strong and she's sent flying into the air. She faints from the internal injury. Still furious, Hyuki yells that he'll end this. But when he looks up, he realizes the girl is gone and asks where she went. Legion says she's right here, and he's seen holding Charion in his arms while floating in the air. Kwon is shocked and asks if that's the void step. The protagonist begins descending slowly and says it's the falling flower step from the celestial thunder steps. He probably doesn't know much about his father's martial art since his father rarely revealed it. Kwon asks, your father's martial art? The young master lands, places Charion against a tree, and says that his father and mother fell in love at first sight. Honestly, he never believed in that kind of thing. However, now he thinks he understands a little. Kwon Hyuki, trembling, asks if by any chance he went through a regression or something, and questions how a child could materialize that kind of martial art. Before he finishes speaking, Jog punches him in the face like a thunderclap, giving him no chance to react. The punch is so strong that it breaks several of his teeth and cracks his face internally. The force sends Kwon flying through a tree and crashing to the ground, unable to believe what just happened. He thinks this guy is on a level he can't even comprehend. Hyuki, voice shaking, begs Jok to spare his life. The protagonist asks if Kwon knows why he hates his father. Because if his father were there, he'd probably tell him to forgive him. His father is truly a frustrating person. Kwon Hyuki thinks the young man is insane and that this is all nonsense, but right now he needs to escape. Jiok, with a maniacal smile, says his mother would say, we will never live like that. Young Master Legion begins drawing his sword from his back and says that even if his father's Tao is righteous, he will live by his mother's Tao. Tao is a concept in Eastern philosophy and religion that refers to the natural order of the universe. As Kwon runs, he hears something and wonders what that sound is. Looking back, he sees a dark aura coming from the young master and thinks it sounds like a ghost crying. Legion removes the seal from his sword, the Northern Inferno blade, and raises it into the air, delivering a two-handed strike toward Quan. As he unleashes the attack, the evil aura chases after him. Quan turns around again and asks what that is, but when he sees it, he falls silent and his body explodes into several pieces. With a faint smile, Jiok Legion says his father's principles are really annoying. Sometime later, the young master walks with Charion on his back, singing, "On a cliff swept by the wind." He stops and sings of the paths to take and what they will bring. No one hears his song from here, but the flowers in the rocks rise to listen. Jiok asks if she's awake. Jong Charion asks him to put her down. He replies that he can't, since she's injured. Charion asks what happened. Legion says that bastard didn't have such good luck in the end. And who would have thought he'd suffer a fatal wound from the sword she swung with her eyes closed? And so, he finished Quan off when he hit the ground. The girl asks if Jiok killed Quan and if he's dead. The protagonist, with a serious look, asks if he's a Jiangshi. How could he survive with a pierced heart? A Jiangshi is a zombie in Chinese culture. Charion, shocked, thinks he died and that she's somewhat responsible. Consumed by guilt, her hands begin to tremble. Jiok, understanding the situation, comforts her, saying she doesn't need to get so worked up. He deserved his end after all. Legion says that people always say that if someone draws their sword without the intent to resolve something, it's an insult to the sword. Charion assumes he's really a mysterious guy. Sometimes he seems sensible, other times he acts like someone completely different. The protagonist comments that this is only the beginning. Miss Charion asks what he just said. The young master, excited, repeats that this is just the beginning. The Dragon and Phoenix Tournament, the Great Celestial Dragon Tournament, and conquering the world. Sometime later, elsewhere, Yang Huayong and Nang Lisang are sitting in a carriage, while Cheon Mu-ak stands beside it. Huayong asks if he made those. Cheon Mu replies yes and shows them some dumplings. Yang tries one and soon says they'll reach Wuhan soon, and that sometimes traveling slowly like this is also a pleasant experience. It reminds her of the old days. She asks Cheon if he knows what Lisang said the first time they met 20 years ago. Nang asks if she's really going to bring that up again. Huayong says that the moment he looked her in the eye, Lisang unsheathed his sword, lowered his voice dramatically and said, "Supreme Demon Empress." He doesn't care about past crimes, but if you ever step into the shadow of the young master, you'll lose your life instantly. Nang Lisang says that was years ago, back when he was still clueless. Yang and Cheon burst out laughing. Mu-ak asks what young master he meant by that. Huayong says she was referring to Legion's father. Lisang laughs and says he can't believe Legion wants to take part in the Dragon and Phoenix tournament, and wonders when the boy grew up so much. Time really flies, and someone comments that a bunch of kids are going to get hurt in this tournament. Yang says Jaeon doesn't mess with kids, unless they're the kind who deserve a beating. Incheol asks if that little brat is still alive. The guard replies yes, and says they confirmed he was seen at the Righteous Sword Sect with Miss Jong. Jang Ingeol questions what the hell that bastard Quan Hyuki was doing that he couldn't handle some random guy. The guard says that the great warrior Quan hasn't returned since he left last night. Ingeol asks what he means. The bastard is fine while Quan is missing. Anne starts wondering if the young master Jok took him out, but then bursts into laughter, saying he must be going crazy to even think of something so ridiculous. He doesn't know how Jok survived, but they'll find out if it was luck or skill at the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. On the day of the tournament, fireworks go off celebrating the big day. There are two banners, Dragon and Phoenix Tournament and Supreme Family of the Northern Sky. At the tournament grounds, several guards stand around as civilians watch the dragons and phoenixes. They start saying the dragons and phoenixes are arriving, and some ask if that's the young master Nam of the Southern Sword Sect, while others say it's the young lady from the Huang family. One of the women screams as the crowd gets surprised, saying that's the young master of the Supreme Family of the Northern Sky. That's Imhagi, the heir to the Supreme Family of the Northern Sky. People comment that he's way more handsome than the rumors say and note he's with young lady Sima from the renowned Sima clan. They wonder if that means the four great clans have begun to make their move. A woman tells a man to look over there. They say it's young master Yang, and with him is young lady Seol, the great beauty of Chang'ong. Those two are young Suchang, heir to the Southern Peak Alliance, and Seol Biokwa, daughter of the Greenwater Mountain Manor. People say young lady Seol is gorgeous and cheer for her. Suddenly, young Master Joke starts thanking everyone for cheering for them and says they'll definitely win, so there's no need to worry. The people, confused, ask who he is, and some say they've never seen him before. Some tell him to stop bothering Lady Seol and leave, while others ask who she is. Charion wonders if Jock isn't even nervous, and who would have thought she'd envy his indifference. Legion says they decorated the place nicely, and wonders if those brats from the Supreme Family of the Northern Sky made some good money off this. Charion calls Jock and, with a slight smile, says they should try their best together. He gives a light smile back and says, "Of course." One of the supervisors shouts that the 8 teams of the Dragon and Phoenix tournament should head that way. Charion says they're calling them. The supervisor tells them not to touch anything and just wait. Legion says it sounds like he wants them to touch everything. Inside the room, various competitors are waiting and chatting. Some ask how many people they think will advance to the second round. Zhang Charion asks what they're doing there and if they're going to be asked to duel at the first gate, then questions what Jock is staring at. She sees the board and asks what they mean by the match starting at the entrance. Are they saying the tournament begins the moment they step in? The protagonist says he gets it and asks if she doesn't feel anything strange coming from that painting. She asks what he means by strange and sees several people in the painting, then says she gets it. There are 8 figures in the painting, and they're holding the 8 traditional Chinese martial weapons. The young master says that doesn't mean anything, and that it's a trap to fixate their attention on the 8 traditional martial arts weapons. She asks, a trap? And questions if he's saying there's another secret hidden. Jiok tells her to take a closer look. Charion says there's nothing in particular, but then she notices something and begins examining the figures again, thinking that the people in the painting seem to be fighting, but they're all actually looking at one thing, the incense burner. People begin to comment that they were told not to touch anything and wonder if they'll be disqualified if they do. Some say the examiners are watching and warn to be careful not to bump anything even by accident. Suddenly, young Master Legion picks up the incense burner and starts examining it, showing Charion the writing underneath, which says Hall of the Dragon and Phoenix. She asks what that means. The protagonist says they were told the matches would begin as soon as they entered, so the first stage has already started, and comments that reaching this place must be the first test. Suddenly, someone shouts at him to wait. Young Master Jiok and Charion hear an angry young man asking if they're deaf, saying the supervisors told them not to touch anything and that such behavior can't be tolerated. He asks if the protagonist doesn't think this could end up hurting someone and orders him to put the object back. Legion stares at him and comments that there's something really wrong with him, questioning why a young man like him lives only by the rules and saying kids should reject and rebel against existing rules. The young man angrily replies that's just an excuse for immature children. He glances at the supervisors and thinks he made it just in time, so he'll take down this bastard and leave a good impression. He says they were only told not to touch items, but there's no rule saying they can't draw their swords, so he'll solve this with his blade. His sister tries to stop him, saying he can't do that, but the young man tells her not to worry. He'll just leave a new mark on Jock and starts drawing his sword. Quickly, Legion stops the draw, forcing the blade back in. The young man, in disbelief, looks at Jock and wonders how he's so strong. The protagonist steps closer and says that instead of being humiliated, he should just listen to his little sister. The young man thinks he can't move. People around them ask what's going on, and if a fight's about to break out. The young man's sister holds his hand and says he did well holding back, telling him not to point his sword so carelessly at someone weaker, and bows to Jiok, apologizing for the rudeness. The young master takes a deep breath, puts the incense burner back in place, and as he leaves, tells Charion to hurry up. Zhang Charion wonders what just happened. At the door, the guard says he'll be disqualified if he leaves without permission. Jiok replies it's fine, while people inside ask what's wrong with him and if he's really leaving voluntarily. Legion stops before leaving and tells the young man from earlier that he may be pathetic, but he'll give him a chance because of his little sister and says that if he wants to pass the second gate, then follow him. The young man gets angry and asks if he didn't hear he'll be eliminated if he leaves. Jiok starts laughing and he and Charion walk outside. The young man, irritated, says he's a lunatic. In the Hall of the Dragon and Phoenix, Charion comments that it really exists, says that was a tough challenge, and wonders how many participants are there and if it won't just be the 2 of them. When she opens the door, she's surprised and asks how so many people made it. Jock looks around and questions if the prestigious Orthodox factions aren't called that for nothing. Charion notices his sarcastic tone and asks if he's saying they're corrupt. Young Master Joke replies that they must have given the info to the prestigious clans and says it's obvious just by the face that idiot made when they arrived. Charion asks which idiot and soon spots Zhang Ingjiol, thinking it's that bastard and wondering how he's walking around so confidently after everything. Ingjiol thinks that judging by the way she's glaring at him, she must know something, assumes she met Quan Hyuki and wonders what happened between them. He remembers he definitely told Quan to take care of that bastard and asks himself what the hell Quan is doing. Jiok Legion gives a mocking smile. Ingjiol thinks something's off and wonders if someone's backing Joke, but then dismisses it and considers maybe Quan took the money and ran. Then he sees Zhang Inhua staring at Jock, who just gives a little smirk. Ingjiol gets irritated and asks what the hell that bitch is doing with that seductive look on her face. Sometime later, a chime sounds, signaling the end of the test. Someone starts walking up high, and everyone looks, asking who that guy is. The supervisor announces that the dragons and phoenixes gathered here are to be congratulated for passing the first gate. That's Bong Suchin, elder of the supreme family of the Northern Sky, the person in charge of the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. The crowd gets excited and starts celebrating. Charion says Jock was really right. They passed. Suddenly, someone yells for everyone to wait. The guards say it's better if he goes back now. The young man with his little sister says he has something to say. Charion says it's the guy from earlier. The young man angrily shouts that this test is unacceptable and asks why those people didn't fail. People ask what's going on and if they failed. Suchin repeats, unacceptable. The young man says that when they arrived, the instructors clearly said not to touch anything and that they simply followed instructions. He points at Legion and says that those who broke the rules should indeed be disqualified. The other disqualified participants agree, saying he's right and that the exam is unacceptable. Everyone falls silent. Suchin tells them to stop whining and asks if they think the matters of Jianghu are a joke. He says you never know what might happen in Jianghu, but you must always keep your eyes open and stay alert. He states that they were careless because the supervisors reported that he went in. And if one day they lose their lives to an assassin they couldn't see, he asks if they'll argue that it wasn't fair. And to whom? Yama, the ruler of the underworld? He asks if they aren't ashamed in front of those who made it here after solving the mystery. They remain quiet. Charion asks Jiok how he knew that the incense burner was the clue and if it was just a coincidence. Legion replies that no, there's no such thing as coincidence in Jianghu. Charion thinks Jianghu is even scarier, more cruel, and more despicable than she imagined. And if she had been with anyone other than Legion, she wouldn't have passed. The boy tells his sister they have to go now. There's no other way. Suchin thinks that one day they'll be thankful they were eliminated today because this dragon and phoenix tournament will turn into hell. Sometime later, Jiok, holding a skewer, tells her to take a bite. A young girl says it's delicious. Legion replies he knows. It's the same meat, but when he grills it, it tastes way better. This is young Suryun, the third daughter of the leader of the righteous sword sect. The protagonist says his mother is perfect, but her only flaw is not knowing how to cook, and to escape cheap food, he had to learn to cook himself, believing that the taste of food is actually the best of the three great pleasures of life. The three great pleasures are food, women, and drink. Ansu says she thinks she understands. After eating his cooking, it's even better than herself. Charion asks if Suryun is enjoying it and tells her to be sure to chew properly. She replies that the meat melts in her mouth before she can even chew. Charion thinks she doesn't remember the last time she saw Suryun so lively. She's always been healthy, but when she turned 7, she suddenly got sick, and even the most famous doctors couldn't find the cause, and she wonders if her illness will ever be cured, since it only seems to get worse with each passing day. Zhang Lichu says she barely ate a spoonful of food and thanks the young master, saying he's truly talented and that he was a big help in passing the first gate, right? Legion says he's well-informed and tells him to rely on him for the second gate as well. Charion thinks that before, she would have said he was bragging again, but he's not a normal person. Only an idiot wouldn't see that and wonders who the hell he is. Sometime later, the young master is in a field full of flowers. When he steps on a certain spot, everything starts to shake and the entire area begins to collapse, with stones falling and only a few paths remaining. Excited, he says, "This looks great." The master of Hua Manor comments that he will deactivate the formation, and the area where the young master was returns to normal. The master of Hua Manor explains that the formation just now was the exotic 9-palace flower formation, which is lighter than the 3 formations used in the manor. The second formation is the 5 elements formation, the third is the 7 stars formation, and the final one is the Heavenly Lightning King formation. Especially the Heavenly Lightning King formation. Once activated, no martial artist can escape it unless they know how to disable it. Jiok says it must be a formidable formation, but the master of Hua Manor made a mistake. He asks what mistake. Legion says there are definitely martial artists capable of breaking the formation even without knowing how to disable it. The master is confused, but the young master says that one day he'll understand what he meant. Mu Yong says that in addition to the 3 formations, a mechanism called the 7 Steps of the Reaper will be installed, and some buildings are planned to be constructed behind it. Jiok says, then the buildings will be completed soon, and with that, they'll be one step closer to forming the strongest and most impressive sect in Jianghu. The two of them get excited. Mu Yong says they've discovered the whereabouts of the wind god and that it was just as he said. Legion says he will visit him tomorrow. Mu Yong asks why all of a sudden and questions if there's someone he wants to offer this to, staring at him. Legion tells Mu Yong that it's a terrible habit to keep asking someone something even when he already knows the answer, and asks if he's really that interested. He chuckles and asks to be forgiven. Zhao comments that he can't stop himself and says that this visit always lifts his spirits, though he doesn't know why, and wonders if there's some story he's unaware of. Like Jok falling into a well at the age of 2 and being stuck in darkness for a day or two. Mu says nothing like that happened, and even if it had, he probably would have climbed out on his own. Young Master Jok says that sometimes he hates that about him. Mu starts stammering, but Legion says he's just messing with him and calls Mu. He says the young master can speak. The protagonist asks if he can have all those lights. Mu looks at the young master, thinks for a second, and asks in the Jianghu, who else besides him could claim them? The next day, in the middle of the city, Charion asks where he's taking her. Jok says they're going to hunt for a real weapon. She questions, a real weapon? Legion says she's terrible at this and remembers earlier when Charion wanted to buy a weapon, so he says he'll take her to a good place. Sometime later, in a warehouse full of weapons with a grumpy-looking old man, Charion thinks what a scary atmosphere this is and recalls Jok said it was his first time in Wuhan. But then, how the hell does he know this black market armory? Legion, playing with a kunai, asks the old man if that's all he's got. The old man stays silent and observes the young master's 2 swords, then smiles and comments that he knew he was special. The weapon shop owner says that since he's a special guest, he'll show him the best items, and opening a small chest, he says this is called the Jade Freezing Dagger. Charion says it's very beautiful. The old man says it costs 15,000 Nyang. Shocked, she asks, 15,000 Nyang? Legion asks what kind of bonus he'll throw in if they buy it. Miss Charion asks, bonus? The weapon owner asks, a bonus, huh? And asks if there's anything in particular he wants. The protagonist asks if they can just pick one of the items there. The old man thinks the young master must know those items aren't ordinary and says, what a strange kid, but agrees anyway. Young Master Legion gives a slight smile, points his finger, and says he chooses that one. The owner and Charion are surprised, but the old man starts laughing and asks what his name is. The young master says he's Jok Legion. He's surprised, saying it's his first time hearing that name, but then thinks if a child barely out of diapers could recognize that, it means he had an unusual childhood, or wonders if he's just an extraordinary person, and questions whether that blade and sword are real. With a slight smile, he says the master of that item has finally appeared and asks if he'll see the young master again. Jok replies, only if there's a bonus. The two start laughing while Charion is left in disbelief. Sometime later, young Master Legion is washing a glove in the river while Charion calls him an idiot and asks if he really spent 15,000 Nyang on a dagger, and as if that wasn't enough, even asked for those old gloves as a bonus. She says she doesn't know if he's crazy or just dumb. No, he's a crazy idiot. Then suddenly she says, wait, and asks how Jok got all that money. And if he didn't do anything bad, right? Or maybe Legion is the son of a rich family? The protagonist says, my God, you're so noisy, and tells Charion to just give him her hand already. She replies that she doesn't need a glove or anything like that. Young Master Joke says that if she wears it, it'll help her improve her martial arts a bit and asks if she's stuck at the 7th star right now. Charion asks how he knows that. Legion asks if there's anything he doesn't know. She asks if this will really help her, because if he's messing with her, Jock's going to get it. The protagonist holds her hand and says even the most trivial object is made to hold energy, and tells her to treat it with respect and feel its presence. Zhang Charion says, okay. As he puts the glove on, she asks if it was a transparent glove. After putting it on, Charion feels something strange, and the energies around them start gathering toward her. Surprised, she asks what's going on because there's a strange energy. Nature's energy starts flowing toward the glove, and Charion asks what's happening. Meanwhile, the surrounding energy gathers in the glove but soon stops. Surprised, she thinks this isn't just any item. The protagonist says it must have accepted her too, and says he knew he wasn't wrong, because she definitely has talent. Zhang Charion asks if it accepted her and questions what is this wind written on her hand. Legion raises his hand and tells her that this is the god of wind. His glove says god and hers says wind, and explains that if each of them wears one, the gloves will react when they're near each other. Joke says her internal energy is still insufficient, so it doesn't activate, but he can sense it. She replies that that can't be, and he says yes it can, commenting that the material isn't just any material. Above all, its original master was the king of the fist, known as the god of wind, the greatest martial artist in the Jianghu 300 years ago. In short, it's a treasure among treasures. Charion asks if it's really that kind of treasure and questions why it was just lying there, like nothing in that illegal merchant's shop. Jiok says he's not sure, maybe the guy was waiting for someone to recognize it. The protagonist says she can block a chi sword with her bare hands. Of course, her internal energy is still weak, so she'll get seriously hurt if she tries to block it, but in the end, her hand won't be cut off. Looking back, he sees Zhang Charion standing still, but soon she asks why he's being so nice to her. The young master just looks at her with a smile. The next day, it's a rainy day, but inside the hall, the Dragon and Phoenix tournament is taking place. Charion is sitting next to Jiok and asks what those footprints across the stone platform are. Bong Suchan announces that the second stage of this year's Dragon and Phoenix tournament is a walking technique test. The test is simple, cross from one end to the other, but with two conditions. You must only step on the footprints, and the two people must coordinate and support each other. Seo Beck asks, walking technique? And says that's easier than he thought, so it shouldn't be a problem, right? Yang Suchang says anyone who's learned martial arts can pass this, and comments that it's child's play. Suchin thinks there's no one more pathetic than this bastard, the successor of the Southern Peak Alliance. From the second gate on, no one gets special privileges, even if they come from a prestigious clan. The examiners have no ties with the scum of this world, and he doesn't want to be part of this evaluation either, wondering if that brat will be able to pass. Young Master Jiok comments that this won't be easy. Sharyun is surprised and questions him saying that. Legion says everyone has their own habits when it comes to martial arts, especially with walking techniques. After all, it's something unconscious. But once someone becomes aware of their steps, their rhythm and familiarity are bound to break. More importantly, the problem is that two people have to go together. A woman asks how the test will be done. The rest are told to step aside, and only those taking the test now will remain. Supervisor Suchin says no, it will be done in front of everyone there. People around ask if that won't give an advantage to those who go last, while partners say to wait and watch how the first ones take their steps. Sharion says that certainly if they watch how others do it and analyze their mistakes. Suddenly, someone says they'd like to go first. The people around are surprised, and some ask if they'll be okay. The protagonist says that guy is smart. There's always value in going first. People say that young Master Im will lead the challenge. Im Hagi, along with his partner, stands in front of the test area. A woman asks if he's not being overconfident for being the first challenger. His partner comments that he's young Master Im. Charion asks what kind of walking technique he'll use. Jok just watches. Young Master Im begins the trial. Spectators say that was extremely graceful. Hagi increases his walking speed as Miss Sima follows along. Jong Charion says the speed is incredible. The supervisors comment that his steps are fast but precise, saying he's showing a fitting image of the successor of the supreme family of Northern Heaven. Compared to that, it seems Miss Sima is having some difficulty, but she's still hanging in there, considering they're the first. The crowd starts shouting that young Master Im has reached the end of the platform, and some shout that Miss Sima has finished too. Young Suchang gets irritated and jealous. The excited crowd says Im Hagi and Sima Young have passed. Charion says she's nervous for some reason and wonders if they'll pass too. The protagonist replies no. She's shocked and asks if they won't make it. He says it's not that they won't. Charion gets confused and asks if that means they can or can't. Legion tells her to come so they can practice, and she asks if they're not going to keep watching. Jelk says obviously not, and comments that most who try next will fail, saying this is a test to see if someone can follow their own steps, so they can't pass like this yet. Sometime later, in another room in a narrow hallway, the protagonist says there's no one nosy around, so this place is perfect, and tells Charion to show him the Scarlet Trace sword technique and he'll correct it along the way. It's a test that, if she can't pass using the 7-star realm and the Scarlet Trace sword technique, Jiang Charion asks if he's going to correct her technique, and if he's saying Jiuk can understand the essence of an art just by looking once, and questions who the young master really is, saying Legion definitely isn't just anybody. The protagonist says he's good enough to teach her. Charion looks at him and says she has no idea what he means, but she'll give him a chance, and then grabs her sword and starts using the Scarlet Trace sword technique. Suddenly, as she swings again, Jock tells her to wait and says to try going slower at that part. She begins the move again and asks if it's like this, but when she does it, she feels something different. Surprised, she says it was just slower, but the feeling of the sword moving is completely different. Legion tells her to keep going. As she performs her technique, Jock watches and gives pointers, telling her to bring her arm in more on that part. Her left foot's position is wrong. Charion thinks every single word from him is bringing huge changes. Jock says she's going too fast at that part and needs to slow down. Charion thinks this is now the final form. This is a completely different feeling from what she's done all this time. After finishing, she thinks, no way, this can't be the Scarlet Trace sword technique she knows, and wonders who he really is. Legion congratulates her and says the Scarlet Trace sword technique has surpassed the 7-star realm and reached the 8-star realm. Charion is stunned and asks if martial arts are just a joke to him. Elsewhere, in the middle of the forest, Mu Young looks silently at the road until, in the distance, he sees 3 people walking. They're Yang Huayung, Nang Lisung, and Cheon Mu-ak. Mu Young greets them and says they've arrived. Yang says it's been a while. Mu Young says the young master is participating in the Dragon and Phoenix tournament, so he'll escort them to the competition hall. Hua Young says all right, but notices he forgot to shave. He looks like an old man. Li Sang says he looks 5 years older. As they walk, Young asks why Gaon is participating in the Dragon and Phoenix tournament and guesses the young master is about to do something strange again, urging them to hurry up. Back at the tournament, the protagonist says they'll be next. The people are confused and ask what they're doing. The young master introduces himself as Joke Legion of the Drifting Clouds and Flowing Water. The young lady introduces herself as Zhang Charion of the Righteous Sword Sect. A confused participant says Drifting Clouds and Flowing Water, and his partner says that Bastard doesn't even have a clan. Joke comments that since the Scarlet Trace sword technique is at the 9-star realm now, this will be easy, right? Charion is surprised, repeats 9-star realm, and says right, and thinks that after getting the technique corrected again, she did it. She remembers the young master saying earlier, it's finally reached the 9-star realm, and thinks she did hear him say that, but it makes no sense since she's never seen anyone advance so quickly in martial arts. Legion asks if she knows the name of the operation this time. Charion asks, Operation name? The protagonist suddenly jumps to the platform and says, Operation Dragon and Phoenix. Charion follows behind him and the two begin to move in sync. The people watch in disbelief. Joke asks if it isn't nice. She replies it's thanks to a certain someone, says she's having fun, that she never imagined her body could move this way, and asks why she feels so happy. It's like she's dancing. Legion says the mind understands the principles and the body channels them into action. That's how you grasp the essence of martial arts. Charion repeats the essence of martial arts, but then realizes and asks if they've already reached the end, saying she doesn't remember how they got through it. The protagonist replies that that was the amazing Operation Blinding Radiance of the United Dragon and Phoenix. Charion looks at him and the two laugh. Meanwhile, the supervisor announces that Jock Legion and Zhang Charion have passed. Sometime after the trial, people in the plaza are chatting while the young master meets with the three elders. Jock looks at Yang and rushes toward her, calling her grandma, but she quickly pokes him with her weapon, saying that's disgusting and calling him a bastard. Nang Lisang says someone might end up thinking he's actually her biological grandson. Legion says it's been a long time since they last saw each other and tells her she's incredible. Huayong asks if it's true he's establishing a martial sect and questions what he plans to do after causing so much trouble. The protagonist throws the question back and says he's going to devour the Jianghu. The old lady Yang asks if he thinks uniting the Jianghu will be easy, and he replies that he knows it will be hard. Huayong says that, setting aside the 4 hegemonies, what will he do about the union of the 9 great sects, the 4 major clans, and the divine cult? The protagonist stays silent while looking at them, but soon says he doesn't worry about things that haven't even happened yet. Yang sighs and wonders who he takes after. Jiok tells Muyong to take good care of the elders. Muyong, confused, asks where the young master is going. Legion replies that he's going after a really ugly bastard. Sometime later, Charion says, "No way," and asks if he's joking. Jock says he's not and that he's serious. They're going to cross the bridge of life and death. She says she's never crossing that bridge. Legion says she'll really regret not going. The bastard he's going after now is quite connected to her, and the bridge is just like solid ground, so she can just walk across it. Charion says it's dangerous because there's a cliff right underneath. The protagonist says there's a difference between an experienced person and a beginner. An experienced person sees it exactly like solid ground. And while he doesn't think she's a martial master, if she at least has the mindset of one, doesn't she think she should at least give it a try? She thinks the young master is right. Charion is just walking a path. As she walks while holding the ropes, she comments that this is better than expected. Legion says he forgot to mention earlier that the wind there is really strong, so she better be careful. She asked what he just said. Suddenly, the wind picks up and blows Charion high into the air with a strong gust. The protagonist tells her not to be afraid. Just think of it as solid ground. She thinks he's right. This isn't different from solid ground. She closes her eyes and thinks she's falling. The young master starts gathering internal energy in his hands and shoots it toward the lady, leaving her confused. But she soon realizes she's returning to the bridge. Charion starts trembling and thinks that just now could have been the end for her and believes she has to keep going. But her body starts to be overcome by fear and her foot won't move. Joke says that when he first saw her, he thought her heart had stopped and calls Charion to come with him, because Joke likes her. She's surprised and wonders if he really likes her, then starts remembering all their moments together and the things he said. Shocked, she thinks no way, this guy likes her. While Charion is deep in thought, she begins walking across the bridge and ends up crossing it, wondering if he's joking or if she heard wrong. Legion asks if she crossed just in time. No. Zhang Charion asks what he just said. The protagonist asks what he said. Charion shyly asks if the young master said that just to distract her because she was scared. Joke looks at her silently and starts walking, saying, just as he thought. She's smart. Charion, annoyed, thinks what a scumbag and wonders how Jock can play with someone's feelings. Suddenly, someone asks who's making this mess on sacred ground. A bald man shouts at her to stop right now. Surprised, Cherion apologizes. When the bald man realizes who she is, he starts going back inside and comments that he guesses young people enjoy doing that kind of thing, and starts laughing, telling them to have fun. The protagonist says his disguise is quite convincing, but still, he can't fool his eyes, and calls him a hideous bastard. Inside the house, the bald man complains about how Buddha can be so indifferent, and asks how he could send such a crazy monster to this place, then starts removing his skin masks while Cherion asks who that is. Legion calls him a fraud, a charlatan, and a thief. He has about 8 useless abilities. Zhang Cherion is stunned when she hears talented in 8 areas, and asks if he's the infamous limitless scumbag. After removing the entire skin mask, he comments that these brats seem to know the rules of the Jianghu. This is the limitless scumbag. The protagonist puts his hand on his head and says he's his disciple. Charion asks, "Disciple? How did that happen?" Jock says he lost a bet and the loser was supposed to become the disciple of the winner. She asks what the bet was. The young master says the first was a game of Go. The scumbag says someone was definitely helping him through telepathy. Jock says then there was another bet and they had a duel. The scumbag, irritated, says this guy tricked him with some dirty move or must have used a potion. Charion thinks all these areas are specialties of the limitless scumbag, and wonders if even so, Legion still beat him. The protagonist says he has a request today, and that even though the guy is a charlatan, he's a good one and says he needs him to take care of a patient. The scumbag asks if Jock really thinks he'll take care of someone, and if he forgot how many rich men ended up lifeless because he didn't treat them properly. Legion says if he treats this person, the bet will be over. The scumbag, surprised, immediately gets up and says, "Fine, then let's cut this disgusting connection once and for all." Cherion asks who's sick. Jock just looks at her silently. Sometime later, she's shocked and thinks, no way. The patient Legion mentioned earlier was Suryun. The scumbag begins examining her condition. Cherion thinks no one has found the cause until now. Please let him succeed this time. The protagonist asks how she is, sir. The scumbag thinks it's unbelievable. This guy's actually trying to show respect in front of others, and says a venomous bee stung the girl, a rare bee called the blood bee. Ansu and Zhang Lichu, shocked, ask, "A venomous bee?" The scumbag says he'll write down the necessary medicines and prepare them, and tells them to give it to her for 15 days, then feed her well and make her exercise to build strength, and she'll regain her health in a year. The whole family is stunned hearing that. Charion says that means Suryun can recover. Zhang Lichu kneels down, thanking him. The scumbag says no need to bow and tells him to get up. Ansu thanks young Master Joke and says that to think someone like the limitless scumbag came there, they will definitely repay his kindness. Legion tells her not to worry, her daughter fought hard for this too, even risked her life, and says it's all thanks to Cherion, adding, "Good job." She starts crying, thanking the young master. Everyone becomes emotional and starts crying with joy. Outside, Jacques tells the limitless scumbag to forgive him for everything, and that he can leave now. The scumbag says he's the straightforward type, fun to have around, but asks if that's not why he came to visit him, right? Legion says the scumbag is right. At first, he needed him no matter what to take over the world, but that child's life is just as precious. He says even a child's life matters to him, and recalls that 3 years ago when he was just a reckless brat, didn't he say he dreamed of creating an incredible Jianghu? Back then, the scumbag thought those were just childish words from an immature boy, but it seems Jock has grown a little, and asks if his dream remains the same. Legion says yes, it still does. The scumbag tells him to show him that incredible Jianghu he kept talking about, because he'll help. Legion says he'll have to risk his life for it and asks if he's sure he won't regret saying that. The scumbag replies that he won't. The protagonist asks if even if he has to call him young master, and the scumbag says that's still better than calling him master, and says he's also curious about what the young master will do, then asks what he's planning now. Sometime later, on the first day of the third part of the tournament, on a small island in East Lake, the participants wonder if there's really nothing there and what they're supposed to do. Charion says she didn't expect the third stage of the tournament to take place on an island. Suddenly, someone yells to call his guards. She asks what's going on. Yang Suchang, annoyed, asks if they really expect him to stay on that remote island without his guards. The supervisor tells young Master Yang to calm down and says the leader of the Southern Peak Alliance agreed to the test conditions. Suchang, outraged, says his grandfather would never allow that. The supervisor replies that, as he said, warriors from the supreme family of Northern Heaven are surrounding the entire island. Jiak says these kids raised on pear-flavored milk never change. Charion asks if everything will be okay. Legion says that the warriors of the supreme family of Northern Heaven, surprisingly enough, are quite skilled. Zhang Cherion asks if he can sense their chi. The protagonist says that even so, they can't let their guard down and tells her she knows what he means. In the Jianghu, a single moment of carelessness can mean the end. Trouble always shows up in moments like this. A ship heads toward the island where the test is being held. A man throws a glass near a woman, shattering it, and tells her to get out. He lies down on the bed annoyed and wonders where he'll find a woman with at least a decently shaped butt, then asks the person outside if they're in front of the island. The person answers yes. As the man asks if they have arrived yet, the navigator says they'll reach it in 15 minutes. Excited, the man says he gets thrilled imagining whether noble family women are at least a bit different. This is the demonic scourge, the greatest sexual demon of the unorthodox path. Yom Chung, his attendant, raises a flag and says, "This is the dragon and phoenix flag," and comments that those who possess it will pass the third stage. The participants ask if he's Grandmaster Yom Chung and what someone of his level is doing there. Charyun comments that if the third stage is about capturing the flag, she wonders if they'll have to fight to steal it. The Grandmaster replies, no, they won't need to fight for it. Pointing forward, he asks if they see the two gates over there and explains that if they pass through the left gate, they'll eventually circle the island and arrive back at the left gate. In other words, the whole island is the third stage. The first 4 pairs to return there, a total of only 8 people, will get the flag. Suddenly, a young lady asks if this is a movement technique test and introduces herself as Ga Yang He of the full royal blood sect, saying that's her older brother. The brother also introduces himself, saying it's a pleasure to meet them. The young lady says she must be Zhong Charyon of the righteous sword sect. Charyon asks how she knows. She replies that her older brother saw her and fell in love at first sight. The brother gets embarrassed, asks when he did that, and says it's a misunderstanding. Yom Chung calls for their attention and asks if they came there to play around. They apologize. Chung says there's no way they'll be able to obtain the dragon and phoenix flag with just basic movement techniques, because this island is filled with various mechanical traps. The young lady asks, "Mechanical traps?" and says no one told them about that. Yom tells them not to worry too much and asks if they see this wooden arrow, saying they used this instead of real weapons. If someone gets caught in a trap and can't escape, they should call a nearby instructor. The instructors will always be around. Well, that's it. He wishes them good luck. Later, Jiok and Charyon walk through the island. While she says there's no one around, Legion says walking an unexplored path carries great meaning. Charyon asks if it's true he's been traveling since he was 10. Then he must have been to many places. Jock says there's no place he hasn't been. She replies that he's lucky and thinks about all the shocking things Legion has shown her, wondering if all of that came from his experiences. She comments that she feels like she's been living under a rock every time she's with the young master. The protagonist tells her not to worry, he'll take her to new places in the future. Charyon wonders about take her and blushes. The young master asks if that old man didn't say there'd be an instructor nearby. She says yes and asks why. Joke says he doesn't feel any presence nearby. Charyon gets confused and asks what he means. They both go silent, but Charyon asks what he's talking about. He's scaring her. Suddenly she senses something and instantly draws her sword, blocking a stealth attack. She asks if that was one of the mechanical traps. Jiok notices another arrow and stops it with his hand. Charyon asks if there was another one and thanks him, saying that at that speed, even wooden arrows would be dangerous. Legion comments that actually that arrow was real. Someone must have tampered with the trap. Suddenly, a scream echoes across the area. The protagonist rushes off at high speed, telling Charyon to follow him. Sometime later on the island's shore, 2 guards approach a docked boat. One man asks if the other knew any ship like that was coming, and the other says no, wondering what kind of lunatic would think of docking there in the middle of the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. Suddenly, they see something flying overhead. One of the guards comments that something just fell, but when the 2 pay attention, they're shocked and say, "That's Instructor Yoon." Suddenly, a voice says, "It looks like there are still a few instructors left." The demonic scourge, still on the ship, comments that he sent his subordinates to take care of everyone a while ago, but they keep showing up one after another. The guards are stunned by the killing intent they feel. The mustached one tells the other to hurry and alert Supervisor Chung. The man with the top knot says he'll be back soon, so the other should be careful, but suddenly a meteor hammer wraps around his neck, cutting his head off. The mustached man, seeing it, shouts, "What the hell is this?" and calls him a bastard, asking how he dares kill a member of the heavenly family. But in the next moment, without realizing it, the meteor hammer strikes him from behind, crushing him too. The demonic scourge descends from the ship, spinning his meteor hammer, saying the women are waiting, and wonders if he should head to the banquet. Back on the island, Jock runs toward the screams and soon sees a group of people ahead and realizes what happened. Charyon arrives right behind him, and they see the young lady from earlier calling for her older brother, while holding half of his body in her arms. The others are shocked by the scene. Charyon rushes to Miss Ga, while young Master Jok notices a large sword stuck in a tree. One of the participants says he had no idea that this was the kind of competition it would be, while others shout to hell with the competition and start trying to call for an instructor. But nothing happens, and silence falls. Jiok observes the surroundings while Charion asks why no one is coming and says something's not right. They need to go back. Legion says they can't because the island has become one huge trap. If someone planned all this, they likely predicted people would try to retreat too. They might have set the most powerful traps, and if they stray off course, they'll activate a formation. Charion gets confused while the young master says they have no choice but to move forward. Charion asks if there are formations installed around and if there's any way to destroy them. Joke says there's always a way to break mechanical devices or formation matrices. After all, they're made by humans. Charion asks what he means by that, and he replies that they should prepare for the possibility that the creator of the formations is trapped inside the matrix. Humans don't like unsolvable situations. She asks how they can deactivate the formations. Legion says even for him, it'll be difficult to get out. Jiang Charion tells him to leave and alert the others. The protagonist says he can't just leave her behind. Seol Byokwa, overhearing, sighs and wonders if this guy isn't lying too much, but maybe he's still better than that fool over there. Yang Suchung asks what's going on and says he needs to inform Grandpa. Sometime later, everyone is walking together. The protagonist thinks that, while circling the island, somehow they all ended up together. Charion comments that all the paths are converging and asks if that means the exit is near. Jock replies maybe. She says she's feeling more uneasy because no more traps appeared after that. The young master notices something and says the ground feels strange. Charion asks why there's a sound of metal chains coming from below. Suddenly, the ground begins to open up and she screams that it's a trap. They're falling. But then she realizes something and sees that Jiok is holding her. Seeing everyone fall into the mud, she asks if that's the original mechanism set up for the third gate. He replies, no, that this swamp isn't a simple trap. The fallen participants are confused and start saying they can't get out, asking what's wrong with this swamp. Joke says it's a hell swamp mixed with isolating sand. Charion asks, hell swamp? Isolating sand? Legion explains it's called that because the sand is bond-cutting sand. It blocks internal energy and pulls you deeper the more you move. Looking at his hand, Joke says he also can't gather his internal energy. And more importantly, the swamp isn't the end. The fallen participants shout for the others to look up and say there's a device. It's a massive mast with a guillotine blade. Charion is shocked upon seeing it and asks what it is, then realizes it's moving. The blade drops at high speed. The participants underneath start yelling to watch out, while some say they can't move their bodies. The blade crashes down, splashing mud everywhere. Shocked, they begin saying that was a real blade and realize it has risen again. Some participants comment it's a relief no one got hurt. Suddenly, the blade shifts position. Charion, seeing it, says it changed direction. A man starts screaming, saying it's turning toward him. Jang Ingjiol asks if that guy is his sister's partner and says, what bad luck. Suddenly, a man grabs young Master Ingjiol's leg, begging for help. Desperately, he pleads to be pulled up, saying he can't get out on his own. Ingjiol looks at his sister, then starts yelling at the man to let go, calling him a crazy bastard. Jiang Inhua asks if he wants them to die too, and tells him to let go immediately, or they'll be pulled down even faster the more they move. Inhua screams and points, saying the blade is coming again. Ingjiol realizes he's about to die, but then sighs, covered in blood and holding his sword, while the man's arms are in front of him and the blade has sliced deeper back. Ingjiol wonders if he killed the man, but thinks no, he would have died either way and even tried to take him down with him. He notices young Master Im Hagi watching him. Nervously, he tries to tell Master Im that he had no choice. Hagi says that was the right decision, gives a slight smile and thinks his choice was correct. Charion says he's impressive, but admits she doesn't think she'd act differently in his place. Then asks Jock if she's a bad person too. Legion says that just having a regretful heart is admirable enough. Right now this world has none of that, and she'll only become a fool once she starts thinking that way. People begin saying the guillotine is moving again. Zhang Cherion thinks that a swamp that blocks internal energy and even that kind of device is hopeless, but wonders why everything seems okay when she's with him, and says they'll find a way out. But when she realizes the young Master Jiok isn't there, she starts calling out for Legion, thinking maybe he left to call the others. Otherwise, there's no way he would just disappear. But then she sees the blade heading toward her, and suddenly something rises from the swamp and knocks her to the ground, making her fall into the swamp. She sinks beneath the water and wonders what's going on. Something is pulling her down, and she questions how far it'll take her. After a few seconds, she drops into clear water emerging from the swamp. She wonders if that's really water and thinks it's faint, but she can feel her internal energy again. Charion sees a light above her when suddenly the young master appears holding her. She's confused and wonders if it's really Legion. Suddenly, Jiok pushes her back up, confusing her. People are startled as she shoots out of the swamp at high speed toward the sky. With the force of the young master's push, Charion is launched into the air near the device. Surprised, the protagonist uses sound transmission to tell her to cut the mechanical device. Shocked, she wonders if that's Legion's voice. She begins to fall but uses her sword to stay near the device. While hanging there, she smells the strong scent of blood and thinks she can't do this alone. Given its size, she'd at least need sword chi. Suddenly, the people below begin saying they can't stop her bleeding, while others say to use clothes and make a tourniquet. Charion realizes it's Miss Ga and looks around, seeing everyone either injured or lifeless, screaming for help, and some saying their bodies are being sucked into the mud. Charion becomes determined and thinks she must cut it no matter what. The protagonist asks if he ever told her the difference between a beginner and a martial master, and tells her to breathe because he's sure she can cut it. She thinks she must cut it before it changes direction and someone else is sacrificed. It's best to believe she can do it at all costs. While the people scream, she closes her eyes and thinks she needs to focus only on the sword. Since the day she first held it, Charion has trained in martial arts without resting a single day. So now she puts everything she has into this one strike. The hand wearing the glove of the wind god feels warm, and she can sense her internal energy flowing. With that, Charion says, "Now," and swings her sword, sending a chi blade flying toward the device and destroying it. Seeing the device fall, she realizes she did it. The people, surprised and looking up, say the device was cut. When the guillotine hits the ground, they celebrate that they managed to survive and comment that they really thought they were going to die, while some ask if they can return now. Sometime later, as everyone walks away injured, a warrior thanks Miss Zhong Charion, not only for destroying the device, but also for walking around the swamp, pulling everyone out. If it weren't for her, they would all have been sucked in and lost their lives. Charion feels uneasy, thinking people are coming to thank her, but the real savior is Legion. But he simply signals her to let it go. Zhang laughs and says it was nothing, and that it's a relief everyone made it out alive. Charion asks Jock why he keeps telling her not to say anything. If it weren't for him, they would have all died. The protagonist says it's not time to draw attention yet. She questions Yet and wonders what he's planning, questioning how things got so out of control and whether it was just a coincidence or if someone was targeting the participants of the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. Jiok asks if he hasn't said it before. There's no such thing as coincidence in the Jianghu, and says he doesn't know the real reason. But this isn't the work of just one person. Legion suspects there's an organization behind it. Charion asks, "An organization?" The protagonist says that since they dared go after the supreme family of the Northern Heavens, they definitely aren't ordinary people. The leader of the Flying Butterfly Association comments that it must already be happening by now. The fourth butterfly stays silent. The leader, looking at the old man, asks if he's still worried because she hired that perverted demon. The fourth butterfly replies that, to be honest, that's irrelevant. His biggest concern is her intention in hiring that man. The leader falls silent and soon says she doesn't know what he's talking about. Back to the trial, people continue walking together when one of the participants says it's there. The exit is in front of them and they all start running, saying they can finally leave. Charion questions if it's really over. As the people cross through, they stop in shock, while the protagonist comments that this isn't the energy of their advisor. Two people looking at the scene ask if it's Grandmaster Yom Chung. Beneath the place where the supervisor's bodies lie, there are many unorthodox individuals. The young warrior begins to back away, as there's no way a specialist like Grandmaster Yom Chung could have lost. Jock Legion says that this isn't the end, but just the beginning. The demonic scourge says they may not know who he is, but many call him the Lust Demon. The others, surprised, ask, "The Lust Demon?" The demonic scourge laughs, saying it's hardly a hollow title. Charion asks if he could really be the Lust Demon. Jock explains that he's a vile scoundrel, infamous for toying with countless women and using them as human cauldrons. He treats victims as mere tools for exploitation, draining their life force through dual cultivation, a process known as extracting yin to replenish yang. Charion asks, "Human cauldrons?" and comments that he absorbs feminine yin qi. Legion replies yes. If he captures her, her vitality will be completely drained, and she'll be left in a state between life and death. So thank God he's not a woman. Charion says this isn't the time for jokes. A woman accompanying the demonic scourge stares at the protagonist and says the boy is a little snack. Charion can't believe what she just heard. The demonic scourge says their employer told them to show these people what hell truly is. Zhang asks, "Their employer?" and asks Jock if this is the organization he mentioned earlier. He says that resorting to such depraved acts instead of eliminating him outright feels more like revenge than ambition. The demonic scourge says there are many women there, but unfortunately he can't absorb all that chi in a single day, and asks whom he should pick. Meanwhile, someone calls young master Im. Zhang Ingyeol tells him they should form a team to take down this perverted demon. Im Hagi asks if Ingyeol thinks they could even defeat advisor Yom by joining forces. He's confused. Young Master Im says to forget Yom Chung. Defeating any advisor would already be hard for them. That bastard is a martial master before he's a perverted demon. Attacking him head-on isn't just wrong, it's downright idiotic. Suddenly, young Suchung charges at him, calling him a damn pervert and asking if he has any idea who he's fighting, striking with his sword at the demonic scourge. The pervert gives a slight smile and quickly grabs Suchung's arm, breaking it with ease. Young Yang starts screaming in pain, leaving the other young warriors shocked. The demonic scourge then grabs him by the neck and lifts him into the air, saying that he's really screaming loudly, but it just shows that all he can do is bark and tells him to tone it down. Young Suchung thinks about the overwhelming presence, but remembers how his grandfather always said that a fight is about spirit, and he starts insulting him, saying he'll pay for mocking him. But the scourge slaps him hard across the face and begins delivering a barrage of continuous slaps, leaving everyone shocked by the scene. Cherion, witnessing this, says they can't just let this happen, that if everyone attacks together, they might succeed. Legion stops her and tells her to calm down, saying the scourge can't kill young Yang, and over time, this experience will greatly help him in the future. After some time being beaten, young Master Yang's face is swollen and bruised. The demonic scourge comments that he should have done this long ago and throws him to the ground, saying everything could have been much better if he had just been quiet and obedient from the beginning. Suddenly, he notices someone quickly passing by and tells them to wait, asking the name of the young lady. While helping young Master Yang, she says her name is Seol Byokwa. The scourge says that the most beautiful woman in Chongqing, Seol Byokwa, is just like the rumors described. And since she's from a prestigious sect like the Jade Water Mansion Mountain, her internal energy must be pure too. But one isn't enough. He soon notices Cherion and says that woman also caught his attention, asking for her name but saying it's not really important. Then orders his men to bring both women to him and keep an eye on the others. One of the men questions, "Keep an eye," and says they should take all the women and leave the island before outsiders notice. The scourge grabs him by the collar and tells him to shut up, saying he's been waiting a long time for this moment. Anyone who gets in his way will lose their life. Suddenly, someone tells the demonic scourge to wait. One of the men calls him an arrogant bastard while the scourge asks what's going on. Jock Legion says that the woman is his phoenix partner. They live and die together. The scourge laughs and asks what he wants then. The protagonist says that if he wants to take her, then he has to take him too. The demonic scourge calls him a complete lunatic, but fine, and tells his men to bring the women's partners too, saying he's going to show them something really interesting. Sometime later, inside the cave, the demonic scourge says he's never seen women as beautiful as the two of them, and to think he got two instead of one. Today's truly his lucky day. Most of all, it seems the two are a couple. Something like this has happened before too. And he comments that he devoured the man's woman right in front of him while the guy screamed wide-eyed. It was fun, and he's been eagerly waiting for today. Suddenly, the campfire goes out and young Master Yang and Seol Byokwa collapse unconscious. The scourge quickly turns and wonders what that was. His spine froze, and questions if it was the wind and where it came from, thinking it's not that woman. So maybe it's that guy. Suddenly, Jock looks straight into his eyes, catching him off guard. The scourge says so, it's him, and quickly attacks with his flail. Legion gives a slight smile and leaps upward, dodging. The lust demon wonders if he really dodged that attack. Jock lands on the chain and charges forward, striking with a palm attack, but the scourge smiles and blocks it with the flail's chain, saying he's no ordinary rising star. The protagonist asks if that wasn't obvious. The lust demon keeps attacking Legion with his flail, causing massive destruction in the cave. Cherion, carrying Byokwa, thinks the cave will collapse at this rate and wonders if Jock is okay. The scourge pauses his attacks for a moment as the dust settles and asks where that bastard is hiding. Legion appears behind him. The lust demon notices and quickly tries to dodge, getting a small cut on his face. The scourge gets irritated and traps Jock's arm with the flail's chain, saying that scars on his face will only scare the women, and hurls him away. But Legion uses the chain to gain momentum off the wall and launches back at the scourge at high speed, landing a powerful kick to his face. The lust demon grows irritated, calls him a bastard, and attacks, but young Master Jock begins to block his strikes and weapon, initiating a counterattack battle between the two. Cherion thinks the fight is incredible. She knew Legion was strong, but not like this. The scourge, dodging the palm attacks, thinks he didn't expect someone like that to be here and wonders how he can be this skilled at his age. He's soon surprised to see a twin palm technique coming his way and, with a slight smile, says he'll go all out too. Their palm attacks collide, causing a massive impact. The demon calls him a foolish bastard and thinks that no matter how strong he is, if he's only 20, does he really believe he can defeat him? Especially after he absorbed so much yin qi. But he soon senses something strange and wonders why this guy isn't losing ground, and instead keeps pressing harder, yet Jiok doesn't move. The pressure becomes so intense that the cave starts to collapse. Charion, watching, believes it's going to cave in completely. Meanwhile, the two remain locked in a power struggle until the cave ceiling completely gives way and debris begins crashing down as they continue to fight. As the dust settles, the protagonist questions how such a weak guy managed to kill so many people, then channels his energy and blasts him into the rocks, inflicting internal injuries. The Scourge accepts that Jiok is strong, maybe even stronger than he is, so he decides to take a hostage and throws his flail toward Charion. Legion releases the seal on his sword, the Northern Inferno Blade. The weapon emits a sinister aura, shattering the flail's chains. Jiok appears like lightning above the lust demon with his sword and calls out to Charion, telling her to close her eyes. The Scourge jumps to the side to dodge the attack, wondering what the hell that was. He barely evaded it. But he quickly realizes another attack is coming and, unable to react, loses both hands. Jiang is shocked to see it while the Scourge quickly retreats. The protagonist with his Northern Inferno Blade asks where he thinks he's going and strikes again, cutting him. The demon realizes it and cries out for help, but Legion gives him no time. He unleashes a flurry of slashes, cutting him down relentlessly. At the end of the onslaught, he delivers a massive strike with the Inferno Blade, decapitating him. Charion watches in silence, while in his final moments, the demonic Scourge wonders who in the world he really is. The Scourge's men rush into the cave questioning how this could have happened. They came because of strange noises and now they're hearing that this one guy did all of this. One of the men wearing a bandana draws his weapon, furious, and charges to send Jiok to hell, but is immediately sliced down before he can even react, shocking the others. Legion then charges at the rest, cutting them down with ease as if they were nothing. Charion, seeing the scene, is surprised and a little frightened by him standing among all the bodies and wonders if this is really the Jiok she knows. Nervous, she calls out to Legion and is startled when their eyes meet. The protagonist says he told her to close her eyes and explains he loses control when he uses that, admitting he still hasn't been able to make her truly his. He reveals that the sword is his mother's weapon. Charion thinks it's a terrifying blade. Jiok Legion says the other weapon is his father's, but questions how he'll conquer the world using only his mother's sword since he refuses to wield the other. Jiang Charion asks why, and wonders why he's even carrying his father's weapon if he won't draw it. The protagonist asks if she's alright. Charion stays silent for a moment and replies yes, thinking that no matter which version of himself he is, he's still him. Sometime later, people begin to thank him, saying if it weren't for his generous intervention, they would all be dead, and that no one will forget what he did. Young Suchung is confused and wonders how all that happened. When he opened his eyes in the cave, there was blood on the sword in his hand. Jiok said he blacked out for a moment, and when he woke up, everyone was already lying on the ground. Charion commented that not only the perverted demon, but all his subordinates were dead. Yang remembers that's what those two told him, and strangely, it all makes sense. It can only mean that Grandpa implanted an unparalleled martial art into his body, and he thanks his grandfather, the leader of the Southern Peak Alliance, Yang In-myung. Su-chung starts laughing and says it's a relief to see everyone is safe. People comment that they had a feeling he had a trick up his sleeve. Meanwhile, Seol Byokwa silently watches Charion and Jiok. Jong says she never expected him to take full responsibility for it. Legion says he did, since honor and status are everything to people like him. Jong wonders if that's really important. Jiok tells her to look over there. His ride is arriving. Thanks to this incident, he believes many things will change. Sometime later, Young In-myung comments that the Dragon and Phoenix tournament eventually came to an end. Marquis says that exterminating the lust demon and rescuing those people was a great deed. In-myung replies that Su-chung didn't do it. Marquis is confused. Young In-myung says that boy isn't strong enough yet to defeat the lust demon. The bearded man asks who could have done it then. In-myung replies that he heard that boy participated in the tournament. Marquis, surprised, asks if he's referring to Jiok Legion. The leader of the Southern Peak Alliance confirms, yes, Jiok Legion, and wonders if he was the one who defeated the lust demon. It's unthinkable, and he says he can't help but feel that he's connected to this incident. Marquis asks if maybe he should investigate him. Young In-myung replies that there's no need to provoke him like that. For now, act as if they know nothing and just keep watching. The bearded man says he understands and comments that, in any case, this is an opportunity to tarnish the reputation of the supreme family of the Northern Heavens. The leader of the Southern Peak Alliance responds that he's decided to let this incident go. The man is confused, but Yang explains they can still use this to their advantage. However, they haven't dug a deep enough hole yet to bury them. The mastermind behind this incident was certainly bold. Since this happened during the Dragon and Phoenix tournament, there's no reason to think the Celestial Dragon tournament will be spared either. And he doesn't know who's pulling the strings, but promises they'll be made to dance. Elsewhere, at the New Wind Manor, Charion says he mentioned going somewhere, but asks, New Wind Manor. What kind of place is that? He replies that it's his home. Zhang asks if that's really his home and says that just when she thinks he can't surprise her more, he does it again every time. Charion comments that he built it with the meaning of being a new breeze that will sweep across the Jianghu. Upon entering, she's amazed. Jock asks what she thinks and if she likes it. Charion replies it's splendid and asks why it's so big. He answers that he plans to establish a new sect there. She, surprised, asks, a new sect? Legion says he's naming it the Azure Heaven sect. Charion thinks Azure Heaven and comments that it's a beautiful name. Sometime later, while walking, she says the garden is beautiful too and asks when he started building all of it. He replies it was a few months ago. Suddenly, she stops walking and asks if that's a formation. Jiao says yes, it's a formation that blocks sound. Charion asks if it really blocks sound and why. Young Master Jock begins opening a gate and explains it's because the true Azure Heaven sect is still under construction. Zhang Charion wonders how there can be a place behind the doors of a regular manor. The protagonist says, in other words, the New Wind Manor is the entrance to Azure Heaven. They took advantage of the gourd-shaped terrain and planned to handle everything while using the New Wind Manor's name, and all the workers brought in were blindfolded, so he believes that's the best way to ensure their safety. He'll create a training hall and dorms that can house thousands. Charion thinks she can't believe it and wonders how many groups in the Jianghu could even support that many people, and what the hell he's planning. Jiok says that all this time the Jianghu has been dominated by the four hegemonies, and he's going to destroy all of them. Zhang asks what he said. Legion says he's going to take their place. At the Supreme Family of the Northern Heavens Wuhan branch, Ga Yunsang, leader of the Blood King sect, says they entrusted their children to them because they had faith. But now, is he saying he's sorry? Would he say that if he had lost a child? The other sect leaders whisper whether they should stop him. Another comments that he's lost it. He lost his best disciple, and his youngest daughter had her feet cut off. Im Cheon says that, as a father, he understands how the family leader feels and says his house will thoroughly investigate this incident. Sometime earlier, Ban Nue, military advisor of the Supreme Family of the Northern Heavens, comments that these people lost their children, and surely some will not accept that quietly. Xions, leader of the Supreme Family of the Northern Heavens, says that the fact this happened at the third gate they had secretly prepared can only mean there's a traitor within their house, and questions what he should do. Ban Nui says they need to turn everyone who made small contributions, including Yang Suchang, into perfect heroes, thus creating a narrative that the children who died did so because they were weak. Their families will feel humiliated. Im Cheon says it's a good idea, but those who still won't back down will suffer the consequences. Cheon states he acknowledges the responsibility, but this matter is also relevant to the Jianghu. Even in the worst-case scenario, most of the dragons and phoenixes survived. There were even dragons and phoenixes who saved their companions while eliminating their enemies at the same time. Ga Yunsang asks if his reaction would be the same if his grandson had died. Cheonse questions why he keeps bringing up his grandson and asks if he wants his grandson's life, if he should cut off Hagi's head or something like that. Ga gets irritated, but young In-myung calls out to leader Ga and says he understands that he's angry, but it's already spilled milk, and he knows that rage won't solve anything. Ga Yunsang clenches his teeth in hatred, thinking that if it had been them who hosted the tournament and Im Hagi had had his feet cut off, the Blood King sect would have already been annihilated. He then lets out a loud cry and falls silent, weeping. In-myung thinks his frustration must be immense, but also questions how many people he trampled on to reach the position he's in now. In the end, the king of the jungle rules the Jianghu. It seems today will be the last day he sees the leader of the Blood King sect. Elsewhere, Jiok says that honestly, a group from the Green Forest called the Windy Mountain Group has set up camp in the mountain. They've been demanding money, calling it a protection fee. Green Forest Group refers to mountain bandits. Legion says he's going to get rid of them right now. Charion wonders, get rid of them? And thinks to herself, is it that again? She tells Jock to wait and says, isn't there a chance that some of them were good people who had no choice but to become bandits to survive? He replies that first of all, there's no such thing as a kind bandit. Hooded and kind enemies. That makes no sense, right? And says that good people remain good until the end. Charion says, even so, isn't eliminating them too much? Jock asks, eliminate who? The guards of the Windy Mountain Group see the protagonist and Zhang walking and ask who they are. The big guy asks if they're lost and says the girl is pretty cute. Legion says they could just tell them to leave, but the guards quickly charge forward with sword strikes and Jock asks if he's a demonic maniac or something. Charion notices and yells. The protagonist grabs the sword strike with his hand and counters with the hilt to the man's face, smashing his nose and some teeth. Jiang, seeing it, wonders what he meant by not eliminating them. The other guard stops attacking after seeing his comrade hurt. When Jock looks at him and smirks, he trembles and runs away. Legion charges at him, saying he could have hit them. At the Windy Mountain Group's camp, Charion is fighting off some bandits while the protagonist asks if she can't feel the killing intent. If she hesitates, she'll lose her life. One of the bandits appears behind her, but she notices and quickly counters, striking him, and thinks she's different now. Her martial arts have improved a lot. Legion asks if it's not great. This feeling will make her even stronger, but this isn't the end. Suddenly, she senses something coming and slashes with her sword, asking if it's a hidden weapon. But it's a bag of powder that falls on her eyes. Zhang asks what it is. Suddenly, the leader of the bandits appears and says, "To think that this chaos was caused by just 2 people," and comments that they must be skilled. But not everything in this world can be solved with martial arts. Charion asks if it's poison. The leader replies that it's not just poison, it's poison mixed with an aphrodisiac. He says her body will grow hotter and she'll give herself to any man. If she doesn't dual cultivate with someone, she'll bleed from every part of her body. He adds that he can't eliminate those who cause such a mess. Charion, worried, says it's an aphrodisiac. Legion tells her to relax. There's a man right here pointing at himself. Jeong Charion charges at the bandit leader, demanding he give her the antidote. A few minutes later, the bandit leader, sitting on the ground, says she must know she was hit by that bag of poison. Only one of the 3 vials contains the antidote, while the others contain potions that will massively increase the effect of the original poison, and he says he'll take her to the end with him. Zhang, worried, asks what he said, but Jock says it's simple, just pour the poison on that bastard. Charion questions the poison, and Legion explains that his martial arts are weaker than hers, so he'll die first. If he wants to live, he'll reveal the antidote and adds that they're both going to die anyway, so just do it. The leader, in disbelief, asks what kind of thinking that is. Charion wonders if she really has to pour poison on someone in order to survive. The protagonist notices her hand shaking and lets out a deep sigh, saying his mother would have liked her if she saw her. She asks, "Your mother? And why?" Jock replies that it's because she's just like his father. Then he knocks out the bandit with a kick and tells Zhang Charion to follow his instructions and control her internal energy, asking if she feels a different energy inside her body, then starts guiding her step by step. Sometime later, Zhang says it can't be true and comments that the poison's energy really disappeared. Legion says she did well not pouring the poison on him. Charion asks if he's being serious. He replies that he likes her because she can't bring herself to do those things. She's surprised, and the protagonist says that in return, she gets stronger. And only when she's strong will she truly be able to protect her own kind heart. Because in this world, being kind and positive has become outdated and frustrating, so she needs to be strong. She can only keep getting stronger. At the Palm Essence Union, Zhang Daesan, the union leader, comments that he heard the girl from the Righteous Sword sect did really well in the Dragon and Phoenix tournament, and asks if that wasn't the one Ingeol was supposed to team up with for the event. Zhang Inhua replies that's right, but she didn't give them the slightest bit of hope. Well, he'd understand if he saw young Master Joke. Ingeol calls her a little brat, while his sister says that either way, it was pathetic to grovel over a worthless girl. Deason calls him an idiot and asks if he's really letting himself be looked down on by such a lowly family. Well, forget it. They say the leader of the Blood King sect took his own life. Zhang Ingeol asks, took his own life? Just because his daughter lost her foot. Inhua says it's stupid and asks if he really thinks it was voluntary. Then says the supreme family of the Northern Heavens must have had a hand in it. Ingeol is shocked, while their father says she's right. The supreme family of the Northern Heavens is ruthless enough to do something like that. That's why they have all the right connections. The reason the Palm Essence Union has grown so much is because they've remained loyal to the supreme family of the Northern Heavens, and asks if he agrees. If they don't stand in their way, the protagonist, with his guard standing on their rooftop, comments that they sure seem to be having a lot of fun, don't they? Muyong says they won't be laughing once they find out what's going to happen to the ancient sword shop. Anyway, it's been a while since young Master dressed like this. Jouk says he's putting in a lot of effort to convincingly act as the internal hall leader of the supreme family of the Northern Heavens and asks if Muyong brought it. He says yes, it's right there. And as expected, the mask he created is amazing. Young Master Legion says it's easy to replicate someone with such a distinct face. Muyong thinks that even so, the truly terrifying part is what the young master can mimic. The voice, expressions, even their habits, becoming identical to the real person. Joke says that if things go well today, they won't need to think about money for a while. More than that, they'll create a rift between the Palm Essence Union and the supreme family of the Northern Heavens. Muyong asks the young master to be careful and says he knows the disguise technique is extraordinary. Jeok replies not to worry, he knows it's impossible to replicate someone perfectly. However, if it's shown to a greedy old man in the dark of night, he asks, how could that man not completely lose his reason? Anyway, if his mother finds out he took this, he'll be in trouble. His guard says she'll understand. Jok calls out to Mu Young and says it's easy for him to say. He's never been slapped by her, right? He replies to be careful, then says he confirmed the real internal hall leader is asleep at home. He's not going out tonight. In the office of the ancient sword manager, the shop manager is surprised and asks what brings the leader of the internal hall of the supreme family of the northern heavens to his humble establishment. He tells the old man to listen carefully and steps closer, saying this must never be spoken to anyone. Not only that, it's something he must carry to the end of his life. The ancient sword shop manager, shocked, thinks that if it's dangerous, it must be worth a lot of money and pleads for him to tell him. The disguised protagonist says he wants him to get rid of this item. The old man, surprised, wonders if it could be what he's thinking, and comments on the balanced beauty, the intricate sculpture, and even the glow that shifts depending on the angle. The revered artifact of the divine demon cult, the Jade Buddha of the divine demon. The disguised protagonist confirms that it's exactly that, the one and only genuine piece. The old man thinks that this Jade Buddha is worth at least 500,000 Nyang. If he can pull off this deal without the leader of the Palm Essence Union finding out, he wonders if he can offer 400,000 Nyang. There's no way someone could get rid of such an item in secret unless it's through him. Besides, it's dangerous just to own it. He figures he can negotiate an even lower price and says he'll offer 200,000 Nyang. The disguised protagonist asks, 200,000 Nyang? And the old man just stares at him. Jock plays along and asks if he really said 200,000 Nyang, then agrees, but only if he pays immediately. He wants it in small, untraceable parts. Sometime later, Mu Young says the young master did great. The protagonist, removing his mask, says that was easy, and that once they break into the ancient sword vault tonight, they'll get several thousand Nyang and recover the Jade Buddha. Mu Young comments he heard the ancient sword's vault is protected by 12 unbreakable formations. Jiok says there are no formations in the world he can't break. The Palm Essence Union will suffer major losses. There'll be an uproar by morning, and with the involvement of the internal hall of the Supreme Family, the fallout will be huge. Even so, they'll slowly drain them like leeches. At dawn, at the Palm Essence Union, Daesun, furious, asks if the ancient sword store was robbed. The trembling manager says that when he checked the vault, all the protective mechanisms had been destroyed and the antiques and money were all gone. But there's something strange. He was visited yesterday by the leader of the Hall of the Supreme Family of the North. Daesun asks, Hall Leader Im, and confirms if he means the internal Hall Leader and asks why he was there. The old man says he left the Jade Buddha of the Divine Demon. Jang Daesun asks if he really entrusted such a valuable item to him, and then, on the same day, everything was stolen. He says it's a strange coincidence and wonders if he's behind it, but doubts he'd have the guts for such a scheme. He wonders if this was the doing of Im Yuno himself, but he's not that reckless, leaving only one possibility. The Supreme Family of the Northern Heavens orchestrated this deliberately. They've been running their business in Wuhan through them all this time and kept a close relationship, so why would things suddenly shift like this? Suddenly, a servant enters calling the union leader and says they have a big problem. The iron vault has been broken into. Jang Daesun, enraged, asks what the hell is going on and if all the weapons have been stolen. Sometime later, the protagonist is with Mu Young in a carriage full of weapons. He says he didn't expect the Palm Essence Union's iron vault to have so many good weapons. Mu Young comments that makes sense, since they were going to be delivered to the Supreme Family of the Northern Heavens. Legion says he left enough traces in the vault for the Northern Heavens to be suspected. The leader of the Palm Essence Union is going to be in serious trouble. Mu Young agrees, but says they're not in a position to confront them right away. Joke replies that he heard the Supreme Family of the Northern Heavens will soon host the award ceremony for the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. But the doubts and suspicions the Palm Essence Union leader has toward the Supreme Family will start to grow. An award ceremony, he comments he heard that this year, those who achieved remarkable deeds will be chosen as the Dragon and Phoenix, right? Like Miss Charion, who disabled the mechanism, and Yang Sucheng, who defeated the perverted demon. The protagonist says she mentioned she couldn't accept the award because it wasn't her own accomplishment. Mu Young says she'll still be recognized. At the award ceremony of the Dragon and Phoenix tournament, many people surround Charion, congratulating Miss Zhang. She takes a deep breath and thinks that, to be honest, he should be the one receiving these messages of gratitude, but it's been a while since she saw him. A few days earlier, Charion asked if he was going to stay in the Azure Heaven sect. He replied yes and said he couldn't keep bothering her. Jiang Charion asked since when he cared about things like that. The protagonist commented that she seemed disappointed. Charion said the Azure Heaven sect was pretty far away, but he was leaving anyway. Jiang said there's no reason to refuse being chosen as the Phoenix. Legion told her that disabling the mechanism was entirely her achievement and told her to take the prize, the money, and grill some meat. She said okay, but asked why he entered the Dragon and Phoenix tournament with her. He wasn't even interested in those things. Joke said that on the first day they met, Zhang In-gyeol picked a fight with him. Back then, even being afraid of the Palm Essence Union's influence, she stood up to him. That was the first time for him. He had traveled to Jianghu for decades, and no one had ever defended him before, especially a complete stranger. She was surprised and hesitant, saying that his journey wasn't just for fun after all. Joke said it was just a bit different from the Jianghu he used to know. Charion wondered what kind of experience he had during his journey. While she was lost in thought, people talked to her and praised her martial arts. Suddenly, Zhang Ingeol appeared and questioned if it was really due to her skills. Charion turned around and wondered what that bastard was trying to say now, asking what the hell he was talking about. Ingeol said it was strange that she was the only one able to escape the swamp, and questioned how she cut that giant device, saying he didn't know her martial arts were so impressive. She replied it was luck. Ingeol repeated, "Luck, huh?" with a malicious smile, thinking she wasn't going to say anything. But he had no doubt she used some dirty trick. Drawing his sword, he said he'd like to use this chance to be enlightened by her incredible martial arts, thinking he'd expose who she really was. Charion was surprised and asked what he said. Zhang Ingeol said that if she destroyed that trap with her own strength, someone like him shouldn't be a challenge for Zhang, so she better draw her sword. Charion asked what he thought he was doing at a banquet. Ingeol asked if she couldn't even explain how she did it, if she couldn't even prove her skills. The people around commented they were a bit curious about how she managed it. Another said it was a truly desperate situation. Ingeol said he hated to consider this, but asked if the Righteous Sword sect might have had something to do with what happened. He meant she was seen walking with a strange guy even before the Dragon and Phoenix tournament. Zhang Charion got serious and quickly drew her sword, saying if it was a duel he wanted, she'd gladly give it to him. The people around said a duel with the Phoenix would certainly be interesting, but the descendant of the Palm Essence Union's leader wouldn't be easy to defeat either. Ingeol quickly rushed at her, swinging his sword, but she easily dodged. He wondered how she evaded that, and when he turned his head, Charion's sword was at his neck. But when she realized it was just a duel, she turned the sword mid-strike and only grazed his face, shocking Ingeol and making him drop his sword. The people around were surprised and silent. Charion sheathed her sword and asked if he was satisfied now, then walked away while people said she defeated him with just one strike. If she had been serious, Ingeol wouldn't have had a chance. Miss Zhang went easy on him. What an embarrassing defeat. Zhang Daesun, watching, wondered how he dared lose like that in front of so many people. Im Cheons told Zhang Lichu that he had an amazing daughter. Daesun overheard their conversation as Lichu said he was flattering him, that she still had much to learn. Xianzi said how modest of him. Daesun thought he'd already been suspicious, since the ancient sword and the iron vault were robbed. But now seeing how the leader of the Northern Heaven family was being friendly with the Righteous Sword sect, he must be planning to abandon them. Once the Righteous Sword sect's reputation rises, he can't just sit back and watch. Ingeol, irritated, thinks that bitch will pay, while Daesun thinks the Righteous Sword sect must be destroyed tonight. Muyong asks if the young master is having trouble sleeping after they changed locations. He replies that he is, but says he's been focusing on expanding the sect. There's a lot to do. The guard says that if that's not the case, then why didn't he stay in the Righteous Sword sect? Jock asks if he found out. Muyong asks why he didn't attend the award ceremony with Miss Zhang today. He explains that she thinks she took the prize from him, and if he had shown up there, Charion might have felt uncomfortable. Muyong wonders if the young master has ever gotten this serious because of a woman before, and comments that he's unusually quiet tonight, so he should get some rest. The protagonist says he doesn't know, he just has a bad feeling. Zhang Ingeol orders them to bring that bitch Zhang Charion to him. The guard, confused, asks if Ingeol is really telling him to kidnap the second daughter of the Righteous Sword sect. Chung So, Zhang Ingeol's confidant, asks if he plans to eliminate her. Ingeol says that simply eliminating her won't be enough. He'll make her experience a pain worse than death. Daesun enters the room, startling them, and sternly says that tonight they will wipe out the Righteous Sword sect and clearly show what happens to those who dare challenge their family. He says that Chung So will join them, as they need a high-ranking martial artist. Chung responds that he understands and addresses him as Union Leader. Zhang Ingeol quickly glances at him, giving a signal, and Chung nods, showing he understands. He then starts to follow the Union Leader. At the Righteous Sword sect, Zhang Charion wakes up startled, sensing something strange. Looking around, she quickly grabs her sword and runs out, thinking she felt a massive killing intent, but she soon realizes that dozens of people have surrounded their sect and that she must alert her family. Suddenly, she senses a sneak attack from behind, dodges it, counters, and eliminates the attacker without hesitation. She begins trembling at the sight but quickly reminds herself it's not the time to be consumed by guilt over taking a life, then rushes off again, calling for her mother and her sister, Suryeon. Meanwhile, at the Azure Heaven sect, Mu Yong arrives running, calling for the young master and saying something's happening. He says the informant left to monitor the Righteous Sword sect reported that dozens of suspicious individuals are ambushing them. Right now, the Righteous Sword sect is likely being wiped out. Meanwhile, Zhang Cheryon continues fighting several martial artists at once, cutting them down mercilessly. She's protecting her family while surrounded. Chung So comments that she's impressive for someone so young. Anne thinks it's no wonder the young master wants her so badly, but wonders how much longer she can last in this state. Zhang thinks she must hold on. Her father was injured defending the family, and she's the only one still standing. A hooded man says that if she surrenders, he'll spare their lives. Charion gives a faint smile and wonders why, at times like these, she can almost hear his voice saying, "You're foolish enough to believe that?" But she can barely stand now and believes she can't rely on Legion. This is a family matter. As she tries to fend off attacks, her weakness causes her to drop her sword. Chung So tells the others to leave the girl alive and kill the rest. The executioners rush toward An Su. Her mother closes her eyes while holding her sister in her arms. When Charion appears in front of the hooded man, she stops his sword with her hand. The man wonders if she blocked the blade with her bare hands. The wind god's glove managed to endure the strike, but the recoil causes her internal injuries, making her fall and vomit blood. Powerless, she believes she can't move anymore and remembers when Jock gave her the glove, telling her it could block sword chi with her hands, but since her internal energy was still weak, she'd be seriously hurt using it. The man, enraged, strikes again, insulting her. Charion wonders if, just a little stronger, she would have been able to protect her family. Suddenly, a dragon-shaped attack flies toward the hooded man, its mouth glowing. The man is stunned as his neck snaps, and he's launched into the wall with a massive impact. Zhang Charion is stunned by the scene, while everyone around is left in shock. Charion looks forward and is surprised to see Legion. The protagonist asks if she's all right. Kneeling on the ground with her head lowered, she quietly replies, "Yes." Jock lets out a deep sigh as he looks seriously at the hooded men. The executioners stare at him while Chung So asks who he is, then immediately orders his men to eliminate that brat first. Legion, irritated, clenches his fist with internal energy and lands a solid strike to one of the executioner's ribs, sending him flying. Another enemy approaches Jock, preparing an attack and yelling for him to go to hell, but the protagonist quickly kicks his leg, breaking it and throwing him off balance, then follows with another kick, smashing his head against the ground. Chung, so surprised, wonders what that was and realizes Jock is incredibly fast. He couldn't even see his movements. He looks around, trying to locate Legion, but by the time he realizes it, all his men have already been taken down with ease. He quickly turns around, swinging his sword, wondering if Jock is behind him. Legion dodges the strike and charges at Chung So, landing a punch square in his chest. The man drops his sword and his hood begins to slide off, revealing his face. The protagonist immediately grabs Chung So's sword, calls them bastards, and with his weapon attacks him, saying they must be Zhang Ingyeol's subordinates. The man yells for him to wait, but Jock drives the sword into the ground beside his neck. Trembling and with a shaky voice, Chang So says that the leader of the Palm Essence Union ordered them to eliminate everyone, but gave specific orders to spare that woman. Jock Legion, with a serious look, asks why. He replies that the young master gave him separate instructions to bring her. The protagonist asks where that bastard is now. Chang So says he's waiting at the southernmost part of the forest and begs to reveal everything he knows if only his life is spared. With his hand on the sword, Legion tells him not to force others to do what he would never do himself, and then slashes him mercilessly. All the family members are shocked, while Charion thinks that once again, Jiok eliminated countless people for her. She soon stands up and walks toward him, asking if he's okay. Legion, with a slight smile, apologizes for arriving late. Zhang Charion asks why he's apologizing and thanks him for coming. Muyong appears and says it's a good thing the young master arrived in time, and that it's a relief she's safe, leaving her confused. The protagonist tells Muyong to escort all her family members to the New Wind Manor and call Limitless Bastard to take care of their treatment. Muyong replies that he understood. Legion tells him to prepare as well because tonight they will put an end to the Palm Essence Union. Elsewhere, at the southern forest, Zhang Ingyeol wonders why that man is taking so long. He should have arrived hours ago. Suddenly, he hears a noise and asks if Chang brought her already, but quickly realizes it's Jock and asks how he got there. The protagonist gives a slight smile and shouts loudly that Ingyeol should get out of there as fast as possible, because martial artists from the supreme family of the Northern Heavens are probably on their way. Zhang Ingyeol asks what he's talking about and why he's spouting such nonsense early in the morning. Legion says that when he was heading to the Righteous Sword sect, a bunch of executioners appeared out of nowhere, so he thought it'd be safer to hide. But then other martial artists showed up, eliminated all the executioners, and took the members of the Righteous Sword sect with them. He overheard their conversation and discovered that they were martial artists from the supreme family of the Northern Heavens. Jiang is shocked and starts to question the involvement of the Supreme family, believing that someone must have escaped and warned them. But then he realizes something and assumes they've been abandoned, and the family has chosen to side with the righteous sword sect. Jiok says that before dying, one of the executioners confessed that he had been sent by the Palm Essence Union, and revealed that young master Ingiol was there. Jiang thinks Chung is a damn traitor. Legion tells him he should hurry and warn his father because they might be heading there too. Jung In-geol tells him to wait and asks why Jock is telling him all this. The protagonist asks why, and says his family is quite rich. In-geol is confused. Joke says it's confidential information, but if he's not mistaken, it's worth a few million Niang. Jang calls him pathetic and thinks that even so, this information is too suspicious to ignore. He quickly leaves, saying he has something urgent to take care of, and is heading out now, but if Legion keeps talking that crap, he'll personally cut his head off. At the Palm Essence Union, Dyson asks if the Northern Heaven family intervened and comments that he hasn't received any news from them, so he sent someone. But all they found were the executioner's corpses, and he's been wondering what happened. Jang In-geol says the righteous sword sect didn't have the strength to handle those executioners, and the fact that things changed like that suggests that Brat was telling the truth, so they need to escape quickly. Jang In-hwa comments that the supreme family of the Northern Heavens wasn't just considering switching sides to the righteous sword sect. They probably thought wiping them out would solve the issue. But now it's clear that the two families have already grown close, and that's worrying. Deason says if that's true, then they're as good as dead. He knows enough about the supreme family of the Northern Heavens to understand that there's no salvation. He thinks that now, with their lives at risk just from trying to check the facts, he has to make a decision. He tells his children to grab that and escape to a safe place. Jung In-hwa asks if those aren't noctilucent pearls and comments that each one is worth 50,000 Niang. The union leader says he spent his entire life gathering them. There are over 100. In-hwa asks if he's not coming with them, but Dason says he knows Makwi of the Southern Peak Alliance and is going to meet him, commenting that the Alliance will be eager to get information on the supreme family of the Northern Heavens. Now that it's come to this, they'll ally with the Southern Peak Alliance. Meanwhile, the protagonist listens to their whole plan from the mansion rooftop. Mu Young appears, calling the young master and saying the family members of the righteous sword sect are safe and have arrived at the New Wind Manor. Jock says good work and comments that everything is going according to plan. There's only one way they can survive, so Jang Dae-san had no other choice. Mu Young thinks that if this continues as the young master planned, it'll greatly weaken the supreme family of the Northern Heavens in the future. Moreover, it'll cause a rift between the Southern Peak Alliance and the Supreme Family. He's killing two birds with one stone and thinks it's impressive how the young master devised a plan so quickly, even though taking down the Palm Essence Union wasn't part of the original plan. Legion says that when the time comes, he's curious what decision Jang In-geol will make. Mu Young asks if the young master isn't going to punish him regardless of his choice, and he replies that no matter what he chooses, that bastard is losing his life tonight. In an abandoned house in the forest, In-geol and In-hwa enter. His sister wonders who would have thought their father had a hideout like this, but thinks it's in worse shape than expected and asks what will happen to them if things go wrong. To put an end to the mess this night has become, she should have ended that family from the start and asks if her brother is even listening. He hasn't said a word since earlier. Suddenly, In-geol hits all of her acupoints and tells her to inform their father that he's keeping all those noctilucent pearls for himself. As he flees using his movement technique, he thinks that if things don't go as planned, he'll have to spend the rest of his life running from the supreme family of the Northern Heavens. But with those pearls, he could live in luxury forever. Before everyone dies, at least one should survive. Suddenly, the protagonist appears beside him, saying it looks like In-geol is in a good mood. Surprised, he calls him a bastard and asks if he followed him, then charges at Jock with his sword, saying he's been a thorn in his side for too long and will eliminate him. But Legion quickly punches him straight in the nose, slamming him hard to the ground. Lying on the ground, Jang In-geol starts coughing up blood, wondering what the hell is wrong with that bastard, believing he was hiding his strength all along. But that doesn't matter now. He tries to grab the noctilucent pearls, but Jiok steps on his hand, stopping him. He asks if In-geol didn't say he'd take his life, and comments that it doesn't look like that's happening. In-geol feels his whole body screaming. He knows that if he doesn't escape now, he'll lose his life. He needs to get back to his father and plans to beg for forgiveness. After all, his father never really got mad at all the trouble he's caused until now. As he runs, Jock delivers a kick so powerful it shatters a tree in half, the impact tearing through 3 more trees. He quickly pushes off the ground and charges after In-geol. Jang In-geol thinks Jock is a monster, and if he gets caught, he's finished. Suddenly, a stake grazes his face and slams into a tree. He keeps running as the protagonist toys with him. In-geol yells asking why Jock is doing this, if it's because of the righteous sword sect, asking if he fell in love with that bitch. Jiok repeats the word bitch, and Jung says his sister seems to like him too, asking what he thinks, suggesting that unlike that bitch, his sister is better. Young Master Legion simply replies that his little sister looks exactly like him. Jang Ingyol thinks that crazy bastard is insulting them both and starts searching in his sleeves, throwing an object at Jock while shouting for him to go to hell. He believes it's a poison so strong that a single drop could melt flesh and assumes Jock was careless. But then he sees Jock catching it with just 2 fingers. He dodges, but the attack still destroys several trees. Ingyol wonders what's going on. It feels like this chase is a game to the protagonist. Jiok jokes that it's a game of tag and says it's a good way to get rid of a bastard like him. Jang Ingyol gets angry but refuses to believe Jiok thinks he'll surrender that easily. Suddenly, Legion stops the chase and asks Muyong if he fell for it. The guard asks why the young master let him run, and Jiok replies that there's a more painful way to deal with that bastard. Muyong says he recovered the noctilucent pearls, and that it looks like the young master's financial troubles are over for a good while. Jiok says that's great. Meanwhile, Ingyol, still running endlessly, believes he's finally survived and soon sees his father and sister talking. Jong calls out for his father, begging for help. Deesun calls him a bastard and asks how he could abandon his younger sister and run away in a situation like that. On top of it, taking the noctilucent pearls. Ingyol begs him to wait, says that bastard is trying to kill him, and accuses him of stealing the pearls too. Shaking, Ingyol says that now that he thinks about it, it must have been that bastard who killed the executioners sent to the righteous sword sect and also Quan. Deesun asks what he's talking about. Who is this brat? His son replies, that bastard Jiok Legion. His father and sister are shocked. Deesun, furious, asks if he's really saying a single boy killed all those grown men, took the noctilucent pearls, and he barely escaped alive. Ingyol says yes and begs his father to stop him. His father then questions why he doesn't sense anyone approaching. Jang Ingyol looks back and says, there's no way. He must have run off as soon as he saw me, Dad. Daesun places a hand on his son's chest and starts gathering internal energy. Ingyol realizes it, looks down, and Inhwa is stunned. Ingyol begins vomiting blood and clutches his father's hand, asking why. Daesun says he always knew Ingyol was an idiot, but never imagined he'd betray his own father for personal gain. And in doing so, he betrayed his own blood. In the end, he had to take the life of his own son with his own hands. Jang Ingyol collapses lifeless to the ground as his sister fights back tears watching the scene. Deesun says he must have hidden the noctilucent pearls nearby and that he'll search for them. Not only that, Ingyol must have been planning something more. That brat is no longer his son. Deesun says it's better to leave the body out here. Someone is waiting inside. Meanwhile, outside the abandoned house, the protagonist observes alongside Muyong. Jiok asks if the guard reported it to them. He says yes. He sent a map of the hideout and an anonymous letter. Legion says this is about to get interesting. Daesun tells his daughter they've kept their esteemed guest waiting. Makwi asks if something happened, and he replies that there was just one traitor, but he already dealt with it. The bearded man says that now that they've brought him to a place like this, they'd better start talking and asks if he wants to form an alliance with the Southern Peak Alliance. The Union leader says that, as he mentioned before, the supreme family of the Northern Heavens has turned against them, and with the information he has, it could benefit them. Suddenly, a loud noise echoes around the house. The door bursts open and several martial artists come charging in. Deesun asks who they are. Behind the warriors, a man begins walking forward, saying they received some suspicious information, so they decided to investigate, and comments that it seems Deesun is betraying them and trying to ally with the Southern Peak Alliance. But it won't be that easy. Deesun wonders if it's the military advisor MANHUA from the supreme family of the Northern Heavens, but gets confused, questioning how it could be betrayal when it was the family who betrayed them first. Daesun says it's all a misunderstanding, that everything happened because the Supreme Family saved the Righteous Sword Sect. Ban asks about the Righteous Sword Sect and questions what kind of bullshit he's spouting so early in the morning. Jong wonders about that reaction. If it wasn't the Supreme Family of the Northern Heavens, then who was it? But when he realizes, he's shocked and remembers what his son said earlier. Now that I think about it, he must have eliminated the executioners sent to the Righteous Sword Sect and also Quan Hyuki, and about the boy named Jiok Legion. Suddenly, a sword strikes Deesun's neck. Makwi and Inhwa are stunned as a mysterious man wearing a hat and cloak appears behind Deesun, driving his sword through his neck. Jang receives a fatal wound, and in his final moments, he wonders who that bastard is and how the supreme family of the Northern Heavens could have someone that powerful. The mysterious man pulls out the sword, finishing off Deesun. Jang Inhwa runs to the body, screaming for her father. Military advisor Ban Nue asks Makwi if he's the leader of the Southern Peak Alliance's White Tiger Squad and says it's not very smart to get involved so carelessly. warning that this is just a small lesson. Makui thinks this turned out worse than expected. The man in the hat and cloak asks Ban what they'll do with the woman. The advisor looks at her and orders them to get rid of her too. Sometime later, the men of the Supreme Family of the Northern Heavens set fire to the abandoned house to erase any traces. Mu Young tells the young master that he'll hire 50 trustworthy people. For now, they'll manage New Wind Manor to mislead prying eyes, and then he'll immediately take over all the businesses and clients that used to belong to the Palm Essence Union. Legion tells his guard he'll leave it to him, since now is not the time to draw attention from the four hegemonies. He says not to worry and asks if the young master doesn't like endings like this. The protagonist says that's not it. He just believes everyone must be punished for the crimes they committed. He feels no sympathy for them. Mu Young then asks why Legion seems so disappointed. He replies that he thought this Jianghu was his father's Jianghu. Jock explains that he started his journey when he was 10. At the time, he didn't know anything. He was just traveling around and didn't even realize Mu Young would follow him. But his past self only wanted to look good in front of his parents. The guard asks if that's true and thinks that the young master, who was always passionate about people and proactive in everything, might have just been hiding his real feelings. The protagonist asks if Mu Young really thought he liked traveling, then says Jock was only 10 years old. He was just following his mother's advice to travel a lot because he wanted to show his parents how much he had grown. But the Jianghu he discovered wasn't anything like the one his father spoke of. He realized his father was just chasing a dream. What Legion truly learned traveling through the Jianghu wasn't justice or camaraderie. It was how to avoid being deceived by others' warnings, how to survive by any means necessary. Mu Young stays silent and thinks that after so many years, the young master has faced countless challenges and endured many wounds. Over time, his kindness to the Jianghu was repaid only with sharp blades, and he just hopes those scars don't hurt his heart too deeply. Mu Young says he was still just a child. The protagonist says he was, but now he's an adult. Yet the Jianghu remains the same. Justice makes fools while the rich prevail, and only those with power survive. This Jianghu will never change. Not now, not ever. He asks what kind of Jianghu his father was really seeking, what he saw that Jock failed to see, and tells Mu Young that he doesn't want to just dream like his father did. He'll make his dream a reality. The guard thinks that in the end, the young master is probably doing his best to impress his father, because he's the one he loves most. Even when he steals from the rich, or punches a drunken wanderer while thinking he killed someone and stole his secret technique, and maybe a few gold coins, the young master is always trying his best to justify it, thinking, he feels so good, there's no reason not to take everything. Maybe the young master still holds a final shred of respect for his father's ideals, such complicated emotions. Sometime later at New Wind Manor, Zhang Huarian tells her father and mother that the leader of the Palm Essence Union has lost his life and that the union has fallen. Jiang Lichu, shocked, asks what his daughter just said and what happened. Huarian says that's just how the world is and explains that the union's leader, Jiang, was punished after betraying the Supreme Family of the Northern Heavens and trying to ally with the Southern Peak Alliance. He comments what a coincidence, but either way, Lichu had no idea young Master Jiok had such impressive martial arts skills, and if not for him, they wouldn't have survived. Now he's even building that incredible mansion, and the more he sees, the more he wonders about Jiok's origins. But speaking of which, he asks where Charion is. An Su says she went to cheer for him. Lichu asks what she means by cheer for him. An Su says that young Master Jiok is participating in the Great Celestial Dragon Tournament. Charion calls out to the protagonist and tells him to do his best. Jiok gives a small smile. She sighs deeply and believes he doesn't even need the encouragement. The tournament judge begins announcing that the preliminary round of the Great Celestial Dragon Tournament is about to begin. The first contestant is the Master of Fist Techniques, a well-known name in Guangdong, Guangdong's tiger, Li Hyok, the Wind Fist Demon, and his opponent is a young man, just 20 years old, participating for the first time. Spectators are shocked, asking if he's only 20, while a mustached man questions what a mere kid is doing there, saying he's just throwing his life away. The judge announces his name is Jock Legion. The fight begins frantically. Li Hyok immediately throws a punch toward Jock, who barely dodges by dropping to the ground. Hyok stares at him seriously as Legion, surprised, quickly gets up and starts running. People start laughing, saying this guy suddenly started running away. As he runs, the protagonist yells for someone to save him. The crowd, still laughing, wonders why he even entered the Great Celestial Dragon Tournament if he was going to act like that, and some ask if the weapons on his back are just for decoration. As the fight goes on, Hyok throws a kick, but Jock jumps out of the way, dodging it, and continues evading Li Hyok's consecutive attacks by rolling around. Viewers watching his rolling are stunned and wonder if it's the donkey roll, a desperate move where someone lays down and rolls on the ground like a donkey to avoid enemy attacks. Among martial artists, this move is considered extremely shameful. An old man shouts at young Master Jock, telling him to surrender before he gets hurt. At this rate, he might actually die. Some spectators yell at the Wind Fist demon to stop playing around and end it already. Lee Hyuk, irritated, thinks these people really don't hold back. This guy's movements are so clumsy, yet somehow he dodges everything by a hair and hasn't thrown a single attack. Suddenly, Legion rushes at Hyuk and throws a punch infused with internal energy, surprising him. But just as the punch nears Hyuk's head, the protagonist merely taps him lightly. Seeing that mocking smile, the Wind Fist demon thinks this little punk will pay. Legion pushes him, causing him to fall on his butt. The whole crowd bursts out laughing, asking what kind of fist technique that was, and saying even their 5-year-old hits harder than that. Suddenly, the Wind Fist demon's veins bulge and he starts vomiting profusely. People are shocked, asking what's happening and if it's some kind of manipulation. They wonder if it was a chi deviation. Taking a hit from a rookie must be a major stain on his honor. The judge announces Jock Legion as the winner. The crowd begins booing him, saying that if he has any shame, he should just drop out of the tournament, while others comment how funny it was. Charion, unsure what to expect, wonders what Legion is planning this time. Elsewhere at the betting and gambling house, Muyong bets 100,000 Nyang and says he'll put everything on Jock Legion. Meanwhile, the three elders remain silent. The betting house manager asks if they're talking about that young guy who barely won his first match, questioning why they'd want to bet so much on him. The elders, with slight smiles, say they'd like to bet 3,000 Nyang on Legion as well. The manager laughs and asks if they're trying to become billionaires overnight, commenting that the bets are certainly wild. He says that if he wins, they'll make 59 times their wager, and notes that it looks like everyone there enjoys gambling. Cheon Moo Ak begins pulling something from his clothes and asks if he can bet the Blood Venom Pearl. The manager says of course, but asks them to wait a moment so he can verify the money and the Blood Venom Pearl. Yang Hua-young asks when he even hid something like that, but says anyway, the more they bet, the better it'll be. Muak says he's not betting on Jock Legion. Hua-young then asks who he's betting on. Cheon Muak replies that it's the Nameless Traveler. The others are surprised and start wondering who this Nameless Traveler is, and Yang soon asks who that even is. Muak stays silent with a serious expression. Sometime later, back at New Wind Manor, they're chatting and saying that this guy entered the competition without even knowing it and wondering what kind of name Nameless Traveler is, calling it childish. Ak says he just made it up on the spot. Young Master Legion says they should have stopped him from participating in the first place. Yang Hua-young tells Jock not to worry because she'll make sure he's buried in a nice, sunny place. Charion suddenly notices something and, startled, wonders what's with that look. Hua-young asks if her name is Charion and says the more she looks at her, the more she remembers someone from when she was younger. Lee Sang and Ok, hearing that, are caught off guard and both spit out their drinks in disbelief. Yang asks them if Charion doesn't look like her and orders them to say so. Hesitantly, Lee Sang replies that the two really do resemble each other. The young master, pouring his drink, stares at Ok and says, "It's curious to think that an old man who never cared for fame or fortune would join the tournament," and says it seems like Muak only entered the tournament to fight him. Lee Sang and Charion watch the two. Ok gives a slight smile and says that now that he knows the young master inherited both martial arts styles, his and the young lady's, how could he possibly hold back? That evening, on the bridge near the lake at New Wind Manor, Legion says he's in big trouble. Zhang asks what kind of trouble. He replies that he's not confident he can win, and says he needs to win to make his sect known and secure funds to keep it going. Charion asks if he's serious and wonders what they'll do. Joke says he needs to eat lots of meat. She says that Legion really ate a lot today and asks if it's okay for him to eat meat every day. Joke Legion says yes and claims he mastered his martial arts so that meat turns into vegetables inside his body. Charion, in disbelief, thinks there's no such martial art. Suddenly, a hooded man with an eagle appears on the roof. Jiok asks what brings him here. The mysterious man tells the young master he has crossed the line. Legion responds by asking if he's being told to turn back and asks who decides where that line is. The man stays silent as the protagonist says it must have been his father and tells him to make sure to relay that to him. The hooded man receives the message and quickly sends off his eagle with it. The eagle flies off to another location. Legion's father says it seems a letter has arrived at floating clouds and flowing water. He says it must be news from Legion. As he takes the letter, he wonders if his son has finally matured. After reading it, he questions whether he's still trying to conquer the world, commenting, "That's Jock Soren." At the floating clouds and flowing water trade post, many people are working. Legion's mother says she can see the messenger hawk and says it must be news about Legion. Soren says Legion must be aiming to conquer the world. His wife replies that he's their son, so he totally deserves to have that kind of dream. Soren says that's the kind of thing that should remain just a dream. She stays quiet as Jock Soren says it's been 20 years since the two of them went into seclusion, and calls her to go with him to the Central Plains. Back at New Win Manor, Mu Young tells the young master that they've been gathering some strange intel. As instructed, they've been exchanging information with black weapon merchants, and one of them said someone claimed to have sold 300 rounds of exploding thunders. The protagonist asks, "Exploding thunders?" and questions if the guard means those explosive weapons used by the Orthodox Path Alliance. Mu Yong confirms and explains that even just one is considered powerful, so something big must be going on. Joke says he'll have to go there, so they'll start by tracking the black weapon merchants and finding out who they're selling to. In the rain, a black merchant thinks there's no turning back. He has to sell the exploding thunder. All this time, as an elder of the supreme family of the Northern Heavens, he's lived a perfect double life as a secret agent for the Swallow Association. But with the failure of the Dragon and Phoenix tournament plan, everything changed. And he wonders how those bastards from the Swallow Association dare blame him. Sometime earlier, one of them had told him he'd really disappointed them this time, and was being given one last chance to detonate the exploding thunders during the Celestial Dragon Grand Tournament. If he failed again, it would be the last time he'd breathe. He thinks that manipulating the Dragon and Phoenix tournament was already near impossible, so how could he repeat it during the Celestial Dragon Grand Tournament, where countless skilled masters are gathered? Worse, military advisor Ban Nue is already suspicious of him due to what happened in the previous tournament. If he gets caught betraying the supreme family of the Northern Heavens or fails again, he'll die anyway. So his only option is to run with the money he made selling the thunders. As he walks, suddenly an executioner appears and slashes at him with a sword. The merchant thinks it's the Swallow Association. The executioner says he not only ruined the Dragon and Phoenix tournament, but also betrayed the Swallow Association, then strikes again asking if he looks like some kind of fool. The merchant just closes his eyes, thinking it's the end, rain hitting his face. When he opens them, he realizes the sword stopped beside his cheek, and wonders what happened. Did he stop moving, or were his movements restricted? He asks himself, who exactly did that? Just then, the young master and Mu Young appear, faces covered, saying, as expected, and thinking that the elder of the supreme family was behind what happened at that tournament. The merchant asks who they are. Jok says he's Jung Uidai of the Orthodox Path Alliance. Mu Young looks confused hearing that, while the black merchant wonders about the Orthodox Path Alliance and whether the truth has already reached them. Legion questions whether that man is from the Swallow Association, because something feels off. Then he suddenly notices the veins on the executioner's face bulging, his eyes bleeding, and shouts, "Watch out!" to Mu Young. An enormous explosion follows. The executioner's body is blown apart. Jiok and Mu Young just stare silently while the merchant asks what's going on. The rain turns dark red. Pieces of the executioner's body fall, but it soon stops. Mu Young says it looks like he used a self-destruction technique in case of capture. Legion says he really hates those bastards from the Swallow Association and asks the merchant if he knows what kind of place that association really is. With a trembling voice, he says he doesn't. Jiok says that's the most obvious answer and comments that's why he prepared that, saying if the merchant swallows it, he'll feel immense pain. The merchant asks if it's poison and wonders how a pillar of the Orthodox faction, the Orthodox Path Alliance, could have something like that. Jock shoves the pill into his mouth, saying, "Pillar of the Orthodox faction, my ass," and adds that rats like him have gnawed away at everything in the path, leaving no pillar behind. The merchant swallows the pill and immediately feels immense pain, screaming and begging to be spared, saying it feels like his entire body is being split in two. He says he'll tell them everything he knows. Jiaok tosses him another pill, saying it's the antidote, and comments he should have talked sooner, explaining that if he doesn't take the antidote once a month, the same thing will happen again. First, to summarize, 12 years ago they approached him, and he became one of them, and after becoming an elder of the Supreme Family with their support, he's been following their orders ever since. Shaken and trembling, the merchant says that's right, and he only knows one or two people who give the orders. The protagonist comments that it's a secret organization where no one knows each other, and calls them clever little bastards. Then he tells him he has two demands. First, give them all the information he can get from inside the Supreme Family of the Northern Heavens. Second, whenever an order comes from the Swallow Association, he must report it to them. If he follows these two commands faithfully, they'll spare his life. The merchant asks how he can believe that, since there's no guarantee. The protagonist, with a terrifying look, tells him to just believe. The merchant bites his lips in frustration and thinks that now he'll have to return to the Supreme Family of the Northern Heavens and continue this double life. Only now also for the Orthodox Path Alliance. He says he'll lose his life either way if he fails to detonate the exploding thunders at the Celestial Dragon Grand Tournament. The protagonist tells him not to worry about that because he'll explain how he can survive. Mu Yong uses sound transmission with the young master and asks what the Swallow Association's goal is, if it's really just to blow up the Celestial Dragon Grand Tournament. The young master asks if it doesn't seem much bigger than just a disaster, and wonders if they're after something even greater. Well, they can't be sure either way, so there's no point overthinking it.